she, her? Is that your pronouns?
Yes, she,
Okay,
her.
perfect. Okay, Jasmine, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you, especially after seeing some of your videos. Do you want to introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are?
I'm Jasmine. I have a channel. I try to do video essays, but they take a while. And I had a video that got interrupted. I was working on a video about Ed Gein for a year and a half, and then Ryan Murphy made a TV show that kind of threw my. Do you swear here?
Yeah.
He threw my shit off real bad. And so I'm now working on another video. I have that video on pause. So now I mostly do live streams over on my channel on Medusany. That's the main channel. Also have a second channel where I mostly do stream highlights with some other random stuff. But yeah, and that's me. Hi.
Perfect. And then I think I saw one of your videos, like you titled yourself like Ed Gein expert. Is that true? Are you an expert on Ed Gein, or is that just for the clickbait?
Well, kind of both. At this point, because so I had been working on a video, which is up on my channel. It's the last like full video essay I put up. But I made a video about Desperate Housewives where I talked about Ed Gein there, and I did a lot of research into him. And then I continued because I was making another video just about him, which, well, it wasn't just about him. It was also like, it was about like true crime and other stuff. It kind of spiraled out of control. It was probably going to be like 13 hours long. So I did a lot of research into Ed Gein from that, and realized that like absolutely no one who talks about or writes about Ed Gein knows what they're talking about. So at this point, I am just sort of like the world's leading expert by default.
Well, I'll tell you this. My bestie was visiting me. I live in Europe, and she was visiting me, and we usually watch some sort of a series together. So we're like, let's watch the Ed Gein series, which we just absolutely hated. But we were watching it, and as we were watching it, she was like, I don't think that's true. And then we were like Googling while we were watching. We're like, wait, none of this is real. Like, this is so exaggerated or incorrect. And yeah, we just thought that was so weird.
It was absolutely insane because and this is why I had to like put the video on pause for a little bit, because it was so much about like true crime and so much about like the different narrativizations of like Ed Gein from different writers and stuff, and how it's like evolved and also not evolved over time. And so the fact that this was like such a huge piece of narrativization on him, because I already had the video, I was already like filming it and editing it, and like I had part 1 up for members.
Sure.
And then this huge thing came out that adds to like the kind of cultural idea of him in such a strange way, where now I'm like, when I started working on the video, the Ed Gein situation seemed fairly like settled. Like no one really was doing a whole lot of content about him. The last, like, you know, true crime stuff would come out every once in a while, but it's just regurgitating old stuff. But then the Ryan Murphy show was just so bizarre that I'm like, now this is a whole new thing, and now I have to wait to see like how this affects people's ideas of him going forward, because it's like I've never seen anything like it in terms of it just being almost completely made up.
Yeah.
I still am struggling to wrap my head around
Not shocked.
the decisions that they made. Yeah.
I'm not shocked by it, because I do feel like ever since, even when I was younger and I'd watch, you know, this based on a true story kind of videos or movies, I would always have to be like, well, if it's based on a true story, this does allow them creative freedom. So what isn't true? What did happen? What's real? And I think I was just shocked at like how many gross, unnecessary things they put in the series that I'm like, he never even did those things. It was so unnecessary. I don't want to watch this, especially in this era. I think like 10 years ago, maybe I wouldn't even have been as disgusted, but I'm just so burnt out from the misogyny of it all. I'm so burnt out from all of the like glorification of watching women on screen, dead or alive, be mutilated, assaulted, whatever layer of gross has to happen. That by the time some of those scenes showed up, I was just like, it's exhausting.
It is very exhausting, and especially like just knowing things, it makes it worse if you know stuff, because what they did with Adeline was so strange. I mean, that was sort of very early on in like when Ed Gein was like still getting covered by newspapers and stuff.
Oh, sure.
Adeline was somewhat of a character, but she's been dropped by most like true crime recreations and stuff, because she was never actually in like one newspaper article. She got mentioned as like his fiance, which turned out not to be true at all.
That part was so confusing to me. I was like, were they a thing or were they not a thing?
No, they weren't. Like, she was just sort of like a woman that was just like in that town.
What?
And so, yeah, so most true crime stuff has sort of dropped her from any sort of narrativization of Ed Gein. And then the Ryan Murphy show, which really it's an Ian Brennan show because he was the executive producer for that season. But they not only bring her back in, but like almost make her an accomplice, make her like the person giving Ed Gein ideas. It's so weird.
It was
to
very
try
strange.
to implicate, or just this random woman in his crimes. And then also the one that I was the most just absolutely disgusted by was what they did with Bernice Warden, which was one of his like second victim, because first of all, she was like the most popular woman in that town.
Right.
It was a huge deal when she died.
Is this the woman at the bar? Is this the woman at the bar, or which scene is this?
Yes, the woman. She's the woman who she owns a store, the Warden's Hardware store, and she was wearing like green. Oh yeah,
right.
So
I
the
know
woman
which
at
one.
the bar, that was Mary Hogan. Hers is actually, I wouldn't say it's fully accurate, but it's maybe the most accurate compared to the others.
Okay.
Yeah, but Bernice Warden, like the fact that they were showing him having sex with her, which never happened.
Right, stuff like that.
Yeah, he asked her out on a date and she didn't want to go. And that very well may have been a murder or a motive for him in the murder.
Sure.
Who's to say? But yeah, just really weird to have this like long scene of her being like, oh, Ed. Like it was, I still can't believe it. Even thinking about it now, it's been a few months since I've actually even thought about that show. And I'm like, wow, that was really nuts.
And like, it's just the filming of it all, just like imagining the crew and everybody there. And it's just so unnecessary. I feel like in this era of my life, and I don't even mean to sound this way, but sometimes I'm like, I don't mean to sound like a prude, but this is unnecessary. Like, this is just an unnecessary display of action that nobody needs to watch. And it feels
I'm
like,
okay with it depending on the thing, like especially if it's like a romance movie or something. If there's something where there's like a build up to a moment, then I'm like, okay, let me see the moment.
The unnecessary violence
show,
or like the exaggerate. It wasn't even like, I felt like Ed Gein wasn't meant to be like a, I mean, I understand that like he did a lot of work figuring out the voice and how he wanted to portray the character, but I just
that was bizarre too.
It was bizarre. The whole thing was bizarre because we did listen to audio tapes of Ed Gein, and I'm like, I guess that's an interesting interpretation.
Sounds like him.
It's weird, but I just think again, it's like for the sake of good art, we can have a conversation, but never at the expense of. And this just felt like the whole show just felt like at the expense of everybody. It just didn't feel right. But I'm not much of a true crime person for this reason. I think I don't particularly enjoy the fandom, and I don't particularly enjoy the way people talk about true crime because it's just so real. It's like someone's real life. But at the same time, I do like watching conversations around how to harm reduce and how to give victims a voice. And with everything happening with Grand Planner, we just covered it early on stream, victim after victim coming out, and now this woman has a credible story, and now he's looking at suspending his race. It's like, so it's not just in movies or media. We are facing a lot of this in real life, and it's like the misogyny of it all, which is why I wanted to talk to you too. So I want to, just to bring it to the topic for today, I want to talk about your video you made about leftist men and misogyny, because I thought that was really great. It was a stream, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then you did a video or a stream on Ariana Grande and how we talk about caring about people and showing concern. And so that's what I want to focus on today. Is there anything that you brought today that you want to talk about, or are those okay?
No, whatever you want.
Okay, perfect. You just let me know too how your spoons are doing, and if you want to move the conversation a direction. This is a very chill space in that way. And then if you don't know my work, I do philosophy through pop culture. So I try to take everything we talk about and spin it into a philosophical lens so we can talk about introspection and extrospection and deconstruction. The hope is that we will use real people's lives to learn about our own and hopefully be less bad people. Okay, so
I've seen some of your stuff before, and I do like it's very similar stuff, and that's why I get a little frustrated sometimes with like, speaking of like leftist men. I feel like there is, especially whenever you're using like celebrity culture or anything to point out like an instance of misogyny, there is just a huge inclination from a lot of them to say that like pop culture and stuff doesn't matter. But I'm like, but pop culture is the way that it's the way that we kind of like reinforce our values, and the way that we talk about public figures and the way that we talk about public events. That is how we like continuously litigate how we feel about how we should like be people.
Definitely.
and treat other people.
Well, your video on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is a great example of that, where that is exactly something that at the time I had to go revisit that, because at the time I was like deeply into this boy debate bubble. And when I watched it live, I was like, oh yeah, she's like definitely the bad guy here. And then everyone in my audience was like, Brittany, what are you doing? And I was like thinking, and I was like, no, this can't be, like, look at the way the court is going. Then recently, we went over the case again. We revisited and we went back over it. We watched your video at one point. Like, we redid everything. And I was like, fuck, like, damn it. It's like, I hate that. I hate it as a public figure. Yeah. I hate it as a thinker. I hate it as somebody who thinks she's smart. I hate every part of when I miss and when I fall for and when I don't do my due diligence. And even with collaborations, girl, I'm hoping you don't have skeletons in your closet, because it feels like every time I pick someone to collab with, there's something there's something that follows, and I'm like, damn it. So like, I'm really trying here to build community and reach out to people, but there's that hesitance because I don't want to I don't want to make the same mistake I made before, and yet I still want to take the chance because we have to build community. We have to build up coalition. Yeah. So
for sure. Yeah. Well, the boys are doing it. They're all sticking together all the time. So.
Well, they do it too because they allow so much to go by. I think that's the problem, is like, I do find that they all, first of all, I always say this, and I know this because I was in there long enough to know, they all do collab, they get together, they all become millionaires, which I'm not saying is the goal. The goal is not to become a millionaire. The results of them collaborating together never really, even if they pick fights with each other, it still makes them rich. Like when they fight with each other. So my oath to myself when I left the debate bro bubble, because I was given that opportunity, was to not engage in it, was to say, no, like, I'm not going to cause a fight and do the YouTuber fight thing, and I'm not going to do this. And I did I saw how that's a path for a lot of people. I'm not saying that you're a completely evil person for engaging in it. I would say that I do think it's philosophically evil, but I would say that if you genuinely need to defend yourself, defend yourself. So I will also say that I didn't need to. It was clear that I was right, and I felt like I gave enough receipts for my audience. But I will say this, that when we talk about misogyny on the left, how, when you made that video, how are you received? Because I think I remember you saying that you have a tendency to make it a members video so you don't make it look like you're fighting or you get dragged, or how does that feel when you make content like that and you put it out there? What's your reception been?
Well, I generally, if I'm talking about like another creator or YouTuber, I do usually keep those as members videos just because I don't want it to be like a thing. And I feel like I'd rather publicly talk about like bigger pop cultural stuff than get weighted down in like the internet dramas shit. So I do usually keep it to behind a paywall, but sometimes I still do, especially with Hassan and with Fantano was one of the other people that I was talking about in the last video, the one that you're referring to. I was talking about them because it's like, at this point, yes, they're still internet people, but they're also like they are celebrities, kind of. Like Fantano is talked about as like the internet critic. Yeah. And Hassan is like the leftist. Mm-hmm, so at this point, they're beyond internet drama. They are pop culture. They are celebrities, the same way that like, I mean, not the same way that like Taylor Swift is, but like kind of in the same
I think they want to be. I don't think either of them would not want to be.
For sure. Yeah. And that's something too that is a little bit, I think it's okay for people to have like large goals, especially I guess as someone like Hassan, he has reason to want to get his message out there to like as big an audience as possible. I sometimes think his message could use quite a lot of refining. Sure. But okay, sure, yeah, he wants to be as like mainstream as possible, but there is also something too of like, okay, well, you're interacting with like the actual like power class, you know? Right. And at that point, you have to be able to like criticize him just the same that you would criticize any other person at that level. Mm-hmm. And I think that it gets a little bit sticky, even though I do consider Fantano and Hassan to be like mainstream celebrity guys. It's still, because they are on the internet and because they constantly upload videos or stream and stuff, they have such strong, their audiences have such strong parasocial connections with them where it adds an extra layer where sometimes, I mean, I talk about Taylor Swift, and the Swifties can be kind of like vicious and nasty because they're such a large standum. But I don't think that there's any fandom as nasty as like an internet man's, because it's like these people watch them every day for hours a day. They really do feel like they know them. And also, especially with Hassan and to a lesser extent Fantano, but him as well, there's like a righteousness that comes with it too, because they're on the right side of things, you know? So
Yeah.
there's the parasocial relationships that affect how dedicated their fan bases are. And then there's the political aspects of like, we feel like in defending this man that we're defending the cause, you know?
Right.
So it is just a pain in the ass to deal with sometimes talking about them. But I can't not, because I'm talking about pop culture and they are pop culture.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's something I've even said to my own audience, which is, you know, at what point are these people just celebrities? Because obviously I'm not trying to pick fights with every single person on the internet. And obviously, like I try not to insert myself because I'm not a political creator, but I do cover politics and I am politically active, but I'm not, you know, I do philosophy. I try to stay in my lane. And at the same time, because they are pop culture, because they are trending, because it is in the news, because if I go on the internet and that's what I see, then I'm like, okay, I guess we'll talk. If my audience is messaging me, Brit, can you talk about this? Well, yeah, I can talk about it. But then some people will say, wow, Brittany, like 6 videos this week and 4 on Hassan. Yeah, but like the first video was about Hassan and the remainder of videos were about updates to the story, people's commentary, reviewing updates. And that's the part that I feel like is so, either I can't decide if I'm being trolled or if people are just that obviously unserious about these topics, but you cannot be the guy and not expect criticism, or the guy. And then, you know, even I saw Hassan being interviewed by, you know, like he'll get interviewed by very like prominent mainstream people. And even they will say, what's something you need to work on? And he will admit, oh, my misogyny. Oh, I use misogyny. And there was this clip I showed on stream and I said, exactly. So if we know we're doing it, but then he'll cover it up with, but I need to reach out to these men on the other side. And these men, you got to speak their language. So that's the problem, is it feels like a lot of these men rise to power and the rest of us have to be quiet for the movement. But then it's like at the expense of who? Always the marginalized people.
Yeah, for sure. And that line, especially with Hassan, like he fucking knows.
He knows.
It's the most frustrating thing. Mm-hmm. Because Fantano, at least, I mean, I don't know if this makes it better or worse, but I think Fantano is completely unaware of how misogynistic that he is.
Oh no!
But Hassan he understands. He knows that he has misogynistic tendencies, and then when he's called out for it in the moment, he gets immediately defensive just the same. Yeah. There's no amount of reflection of like, oh, let me sit back and listen. And that's what's also really frustrating about him in particular, really, because he kind of is the guy.
Yeah.
His community has become like the leftist community, and it's a community that is not very welcoming to women. Like it's pretty hostile. Even when women try to, and I think that there actually is a fair amount of people in Hassan's larger audience that are completely willing to have these conversations. Like, I will say that comparing him to Fantano, I do think that like Hassan's audience is way more willing to admit that he has some issues in that area.
Sure.
And I think that probably just has something to do with like how large his audience is at this point, where like if you're a woman who is a leftist, or if you're just like a leftist who cares about misogyny, even if Hassan maybe drops the ball a lot of the time, he still is like the guy with the largest leftist community. Yeah. So like you are almost just still sort of drawn to it, even when it repels you. And I still just see so many women and also queer people. It's like whenever I bring up Hassan, we'll be like, yeah, I will watch his content, and every time he talks about something related to like women or queer issues, I have to just turn it off. Yeah. Because I can't stand the way that he talks. And if I bring it up in the chat, I just get dogpiled.
No, that's how I feel too. Even as a disabled person, as a marginalized person, as a queer person. I mean, Black and brown people have been complaining. Like everybody has beef with Hassan. That's the irony. And I don't want that for Hassan. I want him to do the work so he can be the best spokesperson, if we're going to have to make him one, I suppose. Or, you know, obviously I'd hope we'd have more of a coalition than one person. But I would hope that he would listen and say, man, a lot of communities seem to take issue with me. Even Consciously recently did a TikTok too, correcting Hassan and saying like, look, let's talk about it. But like the way when you talk about Black and brown people, you always miss the mark. It's like, we got to talk about this. I think the issue is that I think a lot of these people are incentivized to not talk about the issue or not do the work. Or Hassan even recently said with Jen Marco that he hasn't been to therapy, he hasn't done the work. And so you have all these layers of a real person struggling, because Hassan does talk about his past struggles, and then a added layer of having the pressure of being the largest microphone, and an added layer of having to do all this work while streaming 7 days a week. Like, it really is a perfect storm. It's just going to be disaster. And so I'm not surprised by it, but just talking about audience differences to clarify, I believe the last time Hassan did a poll of his audience, and I could be wrong here, but I think it was like 68% men or something around that number. For the record, I have about 68% women. So
yeah, I think I'm around like 70 women.
Yeah. So we're the opposite. So we're having a very different experience on the internet with our audiences, the feedback we get, the kind of criticism we get as well. Like, it is a very different vibe. And I do that on purpose, because when I first came to the internet a long time ago, I was in the atheist bubble because I had just been, formerly religious. It was a long time ago. And it was like 95% men. But the misogyny drove me out of the bubble, because I was like, I have no place here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't a creator back then, but like that is definitely how I think that's how a lot of people, I think even to say that it was 95% men, I think maybe, I don't know exactly what time you were a part of that sphere, but like, I think a while ago, like when I was watching those videos, I think it probably was a larger percentage of women, but like just slowly, yeah, the misogyny it just kept getting worse. Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, a lot of people did exit that sphere, but that was kind of a place where that was sort of the sphere where people were having conversations that were like socio-political in nature in general. And so I do think a lot of people have that origin with the internet and with YouTube and the commentary sphere. But yeah, it is just a thing. And I've always kind of wanted to talk to some of the women who were fairly prominent in that era who I haven't seen in a long time. Like,
sure.
I don't know if you ever knew her or just were aware of her, but like ZOMG, it's Chris. I remember.
Was that the blonde curly haired girly?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm always just curious, like, where is she?
She's probably living her best life off the internet, honestly.
Probably.
But I do remember her. Yeah.
I just want to hear from those women to be like, what did you experience? Because she was someone who was like, at a lot of, she met a lot of those people too. And I just want to know, like, how did you feel about it in the moment,
Sure. But, well, okay. So how do you, like, what do you think the purpose of when you make a video like that? What's your hope and purpose when you make commentary on misogyny in the leftist spaces? Like, what's your goal there?
I mean, I think for me, especially with when I was talking about Fantano, he had just been talking about like, I mostly do, because on my stream I call it Pop Girly News, so we mostly talk about like pop music and he talks about music, so it's like at a certain point he's so a part of that discourse that I can't not acknowledge what's happening, because he's kind of inserted himself into that lane. And so for me it's almost more of just like a catharsis thing a lot of the time, of getting to like be with my own community and be like, look at this man.
Yeah.
Will he's just shut up, please? Mm-hmm. But then also I think that there are people, I think most of my community, because it is mostly women and it is mostly like pop stans, already kind of have a lot of the feelings that I have.
Sure.
And I think that's a big thing for one, is being able to like validate what other people are feeling and remind us that like we are all seeing this and we're not crazy for it. But then also I think that there are some people that find their way to some of these videos that have maybe never heard a certain side of the argument, and people who I think I maybe could kind of convince, because I think I never go out of my way to try to convince people from particular audiences, like Hassan or Fantano's audiences.
Right.
I think that like there are certain people that if they find their way to my video with me not pandering to particularly them, I think those are the people that maybe will be the most receptive, because they were willing to go out of their way and hear what a woman's perspective or like a feminist perspective on this stuff is. but I don't want to. Sometimes I get freaked out when like people, every once in a while, people will like post a video of mine in like someone's subreddit or something, and I'm like, oh shit, but I this was not meant for this audience. And I think
Totally.
that if I had maybe, because I think I can be fairly persuasive when I want to be, but especially when I'm on stream, which a lot of my, pretty much all of the highlights and stuff on the second channel come from just my stream. It's like I'm talking to my viewers, which are like
Definitely.
all like women, not all, but like mostly women who already kind of agree with me. So I'm not like thinking in my head of like, how do I convince someone who's only watched Fantano's videos? So I'm really definitely not trying to pander to that audience. If some people from his audience happen to come across it and it gives them another perspective, that's cool. But I don't go out of my way
Yeah.
to talk to those people. But I also think talking about like Hassan and the bro culture and stuff, I think we all do that to an extent. Like you talk to the people that you think that you could maybe convince. And I do think it's interesting at this point that Hassan is still so interested in like converting people who are like Asmongold viewers and stuff. Because to me, it's like, but that's, if I feel like you should be further down the pipeline at this point. You know what I mean? Like you're such a progressive figurehead. You're such a representative for the progressive movement that at a certain point you kind of can't be talking to Asmongold's audience this much anymore.
Sure, I can see that. I really struggle because I remember even myself many years ago. Well, I say many years ago because it feels like a lifetime ago, but it wasn't. It was like 5 or 6 years ago. There was this hope that maybe like maybe you could talk to an Asmon or maybe you could talk to these boys and there would be something there. But then I think lately, I'm 37, I've been trying to put into perspective like how old we are and how long we've been around and how long we've been on the internet and what tools we have all gathered. And it just seems like these men are deliberately not gathering all the tools they can to deconstruct. And they're more than happy in their bubbles, which is, we're all living in bubbles. I get it. But they're more than happy to stay stationary in those bubbles. And so I think like you, I'm not trying to get an audience that isn't for me. I'm trying very hard to signal to queer people, to femmes, to LGBTs, to men who have deconstructed, to I'm a gender deconstructionist. So like, I think gender is like, I don't even know if I believe in the concept at all, so much as it is an experience we're having. So I'm like on a very different spectrum on purpose, because every time I try to build bridges with these people that were somewhat too right, it was like such a waste of resources when there were so many people struggling who needed help now, who were more left but not leftist, or more left but not quite anti-capitalist, or more left but like they needed that. It feels almost like better if we were focusing on that. But I think politics is like, I always say good people go to die in politics because it's about winning. And I'm not much of a winning kind of girl. I want to know what's good for people and I want to do the right thing. But I think that the energy we put into building those kinds of communities is, ironically enough, mainstream enough to then become popular culture. Then they become celebrities. And so then it kind of becomes the reason why we have to speak out and say something. I mean, the fact that Asmongold was dubbed the largest right-wing news commentator was like, why is Asmongold even in that bubble? Like, why is he considered a news guy at all, or a politics guy at all? And that's just like the way the cookie crumbles with the internet. And that's why I'm annoyed with Hassan or any of those men picking fights with Asmon, because it also validates him. It says he is a contender.
Yeah,
he says
it does.
And for every person that Hassan believes he will convert over, that many people on his side could go Asmon. Because I know a lot of liberal men who voted for Barack Obama who then voted for Trump. So the narrative, right, that, I'm going to get Asmon's audience to my audience, Asmon's also going to steal your audience, sir. So do you want to expose your audience to this man? And I think that I think the decision I have made specifically is to not engage with the boy bubble as much as possible, unless the men are the outliers even within that community. So there are going to be marginalized men within those communities who are the outliers themselves, who are being pushed out themselves. Like, this is sort of the irony. So I'm always trying to build community with those people, because I do think that they probably have more insight to what is better for the future than just what the status quo is. And so it kind of feels like that. So when I watched that video, it just really resonated with me, sort of the frustration of watching people in positions of power with the most privilege ever to make better decisions, and they're not doing it. I also wonder, though, do you think it's because of how we're conditioned? A little bit. I do think it's a little bit how I'm conditioned as a woman. I do think because I'm conditioned that way, I am always thinking about the ways to kind of get better. And I don't know if men have to do that, given that look at all the societal rewards, compliments, platforming, millions of dollars. Like, they have no reason to get better. But I don't know if I could ever feel that way in his position, in any of their positions.
I know. I think that too. God, every time I drink one of these Gatorades, I just watch my tongue get more and more blue. But I think that about, because I understand that, like, I'm also, yes, I'm marginalized in the fact that I'm like a woman, but I have plenty of privileges too. Like, I'm a white woman.
Sure.
I'm for the most part, like, not a disabled woman, like, not in a way that's like particularly impactful to my life. I know that I have privileges, and I know that, like, I probably also have blind spots, but
Sure.
I also can't really imagine just the ways that some of these men react to criticism. I can't imagine that part of it. Even if I
Right.
got pushback for something that I said, like, as a white woman, where I maybe missed the mark a little bit, I can't imagine, especially, like, it was sort of alarming to see Fantano's response to Halsey tweeting at him, because it was like, it was so angry and so defensive and so mean, kind of. Like, he went on stream afterward, even after I talked about him, or like while I was talking about him on stream. I think he was on Twitch, like, pulling up her old tweets and trying to disparage her further. And I was like, this is just so nasty and so personal. And he is so mad about the fact that he got called out. And I just can't really imagine that. And I think that it is, in part, it's what you're saying, that, like, they just get rewarded for so much stuff that they don't have to reflect as much.
Yeah.
I also think it's an aspect too, talking about gender. I think that gender's made up anyway. I mean, like, there's biological sex, but then that doesn't have to have these associations that we've developed culturally.
Sure.
But I think that for me, the way that I sort of see gender in the gender stratification in general, and it's more complicated than this because everything always is, but in general, I think of it as, like, men have been raised and have been socialized to exist in the public sphere. Women have been raised and have been socialized to exist in the private sphere. And I think that even just that, because in the private sphere, it's like, it is a more kind of insular community. It's like, you're talking to your family members, you're talking to your friends, you're talking to, like, your neighbors, the people who are a part of your community. And it is sort of built into what women are raised to be, is to be community members, whereas men are raised to compete. They're raised to win. And, you know, I love winning just as much as the next person, but I also have this, like, I wouldn't say innate, because it's not, I don't think it's something I was born with, but I because of how I was socialized as a woman, I also I feel a need to, like, check in with other people and be like, how are we doing? And I don't think men really do that to a large extent, because that's not what they were raised to be. They were not raised to, like, check in with people and be like, hey, are we all on the same page here? They just kind of want people to go along with what they were already doing. And that gets very frustrating, especially talking about Hasan and the place that he has in, like, the political discourse sphere, like, not just on the internet, but, like, mainstream politics now. He's at a level where I'm like, dude, I just don't think that it's even really okay for you to continue streaming by yourself.
Oh, interesting.
Like,
Ooh.
I think at this point he needs to have, like, other people that he's streaming with. He needs to, you know, maybe, like, once a day or once a week, he has, like, just the Hasan solo stream.
Sure.
But
like, uplifting voices? Like, do you want him to
Yeah.
uplift?
Yeah, like, at this point, if you're going to talk about certain subjects, especially subjects related to, like, any marginalized group that you're not a part of, if you want to talk about stuff related to race, if you want to talk about stuff related to gender, get some feminists on, get some, like, critical race theory experts on, be in conversation with other people. Don't just be sitting at a computer all day and talking about whatever you think, and then, like, getting mad at the chat.
Or being interviewed as the main character time and time again about his thoughts, because the Conscious Lee recent opportunity for Hasan is what I'm going to wait for, because Conscious Lee has a huge platform. He's very prominent. And if that isn't enough to get Hasan, to have him on to have the discussion about ways he failed the Black community in terms of his rhetoric, that's the conversation. I also think this plays into the thing I know about Fantano, which sounds crazy because I'm not in that bubble, is that at one point he said the N-word, right? And I think about this
Oh,
all
I think
the time.
he said it at more than one point.
Well, okay, so I think about this all the time. So somebody came to my chat one day and they were like, Brittany, like you're too like you're just finding everything wrong with Hassan. I mean, the guy's okay. He hasn't even said the N-word. I was like, oh, here you go.
I think he has.
I was like, here's the clip. And I was like, and I didn't even highlight it. It's black creators are highlighting these white men in these spaces, and women are highlighting these misogynist men in these spaces, and we're all highlighting their problems. And I'm not saying they can't change. I'm not saying they can't come back from this. I'm saying it's interesting that they are rewarded into popularity and fame and money. Well, the rest of us are not given that opportunity. Again, I am not saying I want that opportunity. I think sometimes people don't understand what I'm saying, because sometimes they're like, well, you want Hassan's spot? No, I do not want Hassan's spot. I want my spot in my bubble, in my corner, which I already have. I've carved out my spot. But what the mistake is like when I say we, I just mean like anybody else who could be up there with Hassan. Like you said, like I would love to see him do more collaborations. Or like I said, why are you debating Asmin instead of debating people either more on the left and or uplifting more marginalized voices and promoting more good people? Like, you know, I just think that it's, the thing is, and I think he's chasing views, and the views would be crazy if he debated Asmin. I mean, the views were huge when him and Asmin were subtweeting to each other on a live stream. I don't know if you saw that clip. It was crazy. They were both live watching each other's streams. And I'm like, you're so unserious about this, the most serious issues. I think if Hassan wasn't so serious of a creator in terms of what he covers, I think if he wasn't the guy, I think if he wasn't being interviewed, this would be a completely different conversation. But ultimately, because he's decided to be the guy, because he's accepted being the guy, then we have to be more critical about the amount of power he has, just like we would with anybody else in that position. If it not Hassan, it would have been somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think his fans take it personal and they think like it's specific to Hassan, but Hassan is just the guy.
Yeah. Well, and I also like to be kind to Hassan for like a second.
Sure.
I do think that when I watch him be in conversation with people in like a one-on-one thing, I actually do think that he is very human in a way that I respect, in a way
Sure.
that I think that he actually does have a fair amount of empathy as like a person. And so I think when he's talking to someone one-on-one, I do think he's way more reachable and he's way more willing to like hear people out. The problem is just that he doesn't make the effort to do that.
Listen, that we're talking about Hassan like he's a conservative, or like maybe he'll be more open-minded, and maybe if the right person talks to him in the right way, he'll hear it. Why?
Well, it's not even that. It's like I just wish that he would make the effort to talk to more people, because when he does it, I think that he is more open. But the problem is that he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't get enough people onto his stream to like challenge him and have it, unless it's like it's something that is going to be like a debate kind of thing. Even though he says that he tries to act like he's above debate bro culture, and I'm like, but you're in it. He's in it.
He's in it. That I noticed that too. Like he tries to act like he's not doing that, but he does do it. And so again, it is what it is. So are there any takeaways from just exploring this bubble and being a woman in this space? Any takeaways that you've had, any realizations that you would want to share? Anything that's come to mind as you cover these stories and you see it happening, especially as we head into, I assume you're politically involved, like elections, or especially as we head into the future, like anything that stands out?
I mean, I think that just I am always kind of reminded by the fact, like the feedback that I get from some of my audience whenever I talk about Hassan or other people. I am reminded that like there's a lot of crossover in our audiences.
Yeah.
But the crossover is growingly frustrated with him and for sure seeking refuge somewhere else. The problem is that there is no refuge that has his size of platform. Like there's no one at his level that is talking about the things that we're talking about. And that is, I mean, it's motivation to continue talking about it, to remember that like there is a community there that sees, that it generally agrees with the progressive, the actually progressive politics that these men do have. They agree with those parts, but they have a much smaller amount of opportunities to talk about the issues of like misogyny and other things that these men get so wrong all the time, that like even if I'm a smaller channel, like I feel like I still have to kind of be there for that audience. Definitely. To be able to have a space.
I think so too. I can't tell you how many people have come into my audience recently and said like, It took me forever to really understand exactly what you're saying, but now I see it and I can't unsee it. Like I can't unsee the patriarchy, the misogyny of it all. And that's the whole thing with everything, is that once you see it, it is hard to unsee it. But there's a place, even as small as we are. Like I am a full-time creator. I've been doing this full-time for many years. I'm very lucky. I feel very blessed, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Because even though we're small communities, we exist and we are needed, I think, in this space. And for all the people that are seeking it out, like I used to be the person who was like, I'm so excited about debates, I'm so excited about discussion, we're really gonna solve problems. And then to realize like there was no solving of the problem. So actually, can we transition into the Ariana conversation, talking about solving problems? Okay, so I saw your videos on Ariana. I think you made two that I saw. They were streams, and I covered Ariana, and I came from the perspective, and then you can share yours, of I don't want to make content about Ariana. I will make content about people making content about Ariana, and I don't, as a disabled person and a person who thinks people deserve and to exist in public when they're sick. I didn't appreciate the way people felt like, oh, like no one's allowing us to have this conversation, or she needs to be deplatformed, or why are we pretending that she's not sick narratives. I just don't love these narratives because I think that it's not good overall. And so I took issue with a lot of those narratives that I saw going around. So that was where I was coming from initially. I guess we'll start there. Where were you coming from initially when you talked about Ariana?
Well, for me, because again, I do like pop girl stuff. I do like pop related stuff. So it's like Ariana is already just in the orbit of people that I'm going to talk about anyway.
Definitely. Keep talking. I'm gonna blow my nose off camera because I'm embarrassed. Okay, you keep talking.
Got you. Okay, but so because I already was going to be talking about pop stars and Ariana was going to come up, it was something to me where there already was some amount of a conversation around Ariana and around her body and the fact that like she is getting noticeably thinner and has been for a bit, especially with like the Wicked promo. And that was something where, and I think at this point there has really been a breakthrough of like way more people being willing to have the conversation. But for a while, and this is kind of the first stream that I did, for a while it was this thing of like, we all see it, but we all just should not talk about it, which I already had some mixed feelings about, but I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, it is none of our business. It could, getting this discourse to like a high level of attention could make the issue worse for her. It is not something that I feel super comfortable about in general, of just talking about people's bodies and speculating on people's bodies. But then it kept going and kept going. And then with the tour and with how noticeably thin she was there, it just felt like, okay, at this point, it's so in front of our face, especially as like pop stans. And that's the thing for me, is I don't think everybody should be talking about this. I definitely don't think that like, and the amount of people that I see making videos about it, and the like some of the specific channels that I see making videos about it, that like those are not like pop channels. Those are not people who are already engaged in conversations about Ariana or any of the other like big pop girls. They're just kind of making drama content, and they're just making like gawker content of like, look at this woman, and that makes me super uncomfortable. But for a bit, like the reason why I made that stream and made those highlights is like, we're already having conversations about Ariana Grande. We're already going to be talking about this tour the same way that we talk about any big pop girls tour. That I can't continue to talk about the tour and not mention this part, and not mention the fact that like it does look like she's dying. And that is something, especially too, as like a pop stan, I think one of the reasons that it was so like eerie to me in a way is that I've seen similar things happen, not just with the weight or anything, but like being a fan of pop stars. If you are like a fan of like a pop star and you're like a huge fan where you follow what they do, at some point, if it's like a big mainstream girl, at some point there's going to be a point in their career where you look at what's happening and you say, I think this woman might not be okay, and I'm not sure that the people around her care, or that they don't care enough to stop it because they're all making so much money. And that was what was so eerie to me with the tour. Because I agree, like, I don't think Ariana should be deplatformed. I mean, for one thing, I'm very excited for that album. I think that the single was so good.
Oh, so good. It was really good. I don't even listen to Ariana like that, but I did watch the video and I did listen to the song and I was like, this is a banger. Like, this is good.
It's real good. It's, I think, one of her best. So I'm very much looking forward to the album. I don't think that she should stop making music. I don't think she should stop making art. I mean, even the music video, she's very thin in the music video. And for me, it's like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to stop her from making music videos? No. But the tour for me is just like a step too far of, number one, because I'm such a huge pop stan, it's like I understand so much the toll that a tour takes on a person mentally, physically, and especially like the kind of tour and the kind of show that Ariana puts on. It's very high energy. It's very active. And then also on top of it, presuming at this point, and we don't know, but presuming that it's an eating disorder and that it's not some other sort of medical problem or something, presuming that it is just her being so public all the time and being on a stage in front of all these thousands of people, it is something that like is probably going to make her condition worse, like the symptoms mentally worse for her, because she's always going to be under scrutiny, and she's in a position where it's like she's on stage and she has to be so conscious of her body at every moment. And so it just feels like this is something where it's a step too far for me, where, and this is where I think I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, well, what do you want her? You want her team or her family to like prevent her from going on tour? And I'm like, it's not about specifically, I mean, I guess you could say it's prevention, but it also is something where a tour can't happen unless other people agree to do it. And that's where I'm a little bit more critical of the idea that this tour could ever be a good thing. Or like it should, I don't know. There's just something a little disturbing to me about it, of like the amount of people that are complicit in allowing this to go forward, knowing that she probably isn't in the right state of mind to like fully understand the consequence this could have to her body and to her life. Like it is life-threatening, frankly. But the amount of people that still, because it's paying their paychecks, will still be like, okay, well, I'm going to go on stage with Ariana anyway. It's like, at what point do you draw a personal boundary of like, Ariana, I'm not going on stage with you looking like that. Like, I'm not going to go on stage when you look like you're about to pass out. That part is a little disturbing to me. And it's just, it's hard as a pop fan. And I've seen the commentary of people being like, it's unethical to go to the shows. And I don't really agree with that part. I think that it would be weird to me. I'm glad that I don't have tickets at this point, because it would be weird to me to be in the stands and look at what's happening. But I also feel like if you already have tickets, first of all, let's not act like people are buying tickets right now. I've seen the whole thing of like, if you're buying the ticket, you're funding.
Sure.
I mean, but it's like this tour sold out months ago. Everyone who has tickets has had tickets for a while. They didn't know what state she was going to be in at the time. And the tour is going to go forward whether or not like individual people decide not to show up. You know, it's like there's just such a huge demand.
Right. Tell me if I remember correctly. In your video, did you specifically mention that her dancers, and that you were like, maybe her dancers shouldn't be on stage with her? Or is that somebody else? I watch a lot of videos.
Well, I said I was just, it's not, I don't want to like single any particular person out, but it's just the thing of like the amount of enabling, because at this point I understand. See, the thing that I think makes it different is the fact that it probably is an eating disorder. Like there's just so many indications that that's what it is.
What does it matter that it's an eating disorder? That's where I kind of lose people. What does it matter if it's cancer or an eating disorder? Like, does she not?
This is where it makes a difference. Is like the symptoms of an eating disorder are almost certainly going to get worse being on that stage and like having that amount of people looking at you all the time, and it's going to like feed and enable the like disease. So to me, it's like, enabling the tour to go forward is, it feels analogous of like driving your friend who's a drug addict to their dealer. And that's where I'm like, I think that she should be able to make her music. I think that she should be able to make videos and stuff. But like the people around her, like the amount of people that feel comfortable being a part of something that is almost certainly going to make her condition worse, and probably is something that I don't know if she's in the right state of mind to completely understand the consequences of her actions due to how an eating disorder does affect your thought process. Because
I think that's the problem I'm having a little bit, if I may, is we don't know anything that's happening. And so it feels like I would prefer an observation that didn't require us to guess. Do you know what I'm saying? There's just so much guessing that goes into all of these thoughts because we don't know. And it was like, look, I was part of the Free Britney movement in a sense that I was spiritually there. I read her book. Like, I want Britney to be free. And without a doubt, this woman has been permanently impacted, right? Like, impacted. And like, could have intervention happened sooner? Yes. And I think the dilemma is like, we don't know. The question is, how do we empower young girls as they go into this industry to have the power to advocate for themselves rather than taking something, because Britney still wants to perform. Like, Britney wanted to perform. She's just like not in a healthy place enough to do it now. But it's not like she never wanted to sing or perform. She loved her job. The question is like, not that Ariana doesn't love her job or she shouldn't perform. I think she should. The question is, how do we give her the choice? Because like, does she even have that choice? Can she make that choice? Like, we just don't know enough. So when is it inappropriate for people to even say anything of concern if they don't know, rather than, I think mine was the only video that had resources for eating disorders, resources for family unity or family support for eating disorders, or not unity, support. Like, I checked everyone's videos and I was like, everyone says they care about eating disorders, but I didn't see resources in anybody's videos. So like, is this about eating disorders? Is this about disability? Or is this about, what is this about really?
I think for a lot of people, it's probably not. It's just like a thing where you can look at it and be like, wow, look at how, it's the same thing with like a lot of the content about Eugenia Cooney, where it's like, look at how thin this woman is.
Exactly.
But I think that, like, I don't think you necessarily need to have specific resources in your videos or in your descriptions to be able to, like, for there to be something productive about the conversation if you're doing it with like some amount of consideration and thought, which I think maybe a lot of people don't have. But for me, the reason that I would say we don't know exactly what's happening. And I do think that the bigger part of my commentary at this point is just the idea that it could be healthy, which is a little bit absurd to me. And I'll talk about that in a second. But
yeah, please.
It's sticking in this realm for a moment. It is a little bit more than just guessing whether or not Ariana has an eating disorder. Like, there's quite a lot of evidence. She did have a Tumblr that was kind of like a pro-Anna Tumblr for a bit. There's various things throughout her career where you can look at and be like, oh, that is a woman with a very unhealthy attitude toward eating and toward her body. And so it's a little bit more than guesswork. But I think that's where I would say, like, is the difference of the people around her enabling the tour, because it is probably going to make her even more symptomatic, presuming she has an eating disorder, which I think 99% of the evidence points to. But going off of that, I think where I had the break of like, because if Ariana has an eating disorder, that's like a private thing. And most people who have eating disorders, and I think this should be for sure mentioned and emphasized more, and I think that I maybe haven't even emphasized it as much as I probably should have, but like, most people who have eating disorders do not look like Ariana Grande. Plenty of people, it is so underdiagnosed. Anorexia specifically is so underdiagnosed in people who are considered like overweight according to their BMI.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and that is something that like, I have tried to emphasize of like, if you're starving yourself, it doesn't really matter what your body looks like. If you're starving yourself, you're starving yourself. Like, your body needs food. And it needs like a fairly regular intake of it. But even if you don't, because this is sort of, and I think I haven't really talked about this aspect of it, which maybe will help some people understand, but part of the reason that I even feel so strongly about it is like, I've never had like anorexia nervosa. I've never had the eating disorder where you are consciously thinking like, you want to restrict your calories for like a particular reason or whatever. But I have had what would like medically still be considered like anorexia, because anorexia just means like loss of appetite, or it means like not eating or whatever. And I have absolutely gone through periods, like if I get anxious, if I get really depressed, like I just lose my appetite and I don't eat. And I didn't think of that as being like super bad for me. which obviously it was in retrospect, you have to eat. But like, because I wasn't thinking about like restricting my calories, I wasn't doing it on purpose. The fact that I was losing so much weight was not something that I was thinking about as like a serious medical thing. And I think that where I think, because even though I don't think we should be commenting on people's bodies in general, most of the time, we live in such a fat phobic society that so values thinness and so associates thinness with health. I mean, I've before like tried to look up like, you know, healthy eating recipes, and I at some point just had to stop looking up anything related to like healthy eating or whatever, because it always was like healthy eating to lose weight, low calorie meals. It's like, but that's not what I'm asking for. Like, healthy doesn't automatically equal thin, but we have that association. And so part of what I have found so disturbing about Ariana and the conversation about Ariana is like, she is noticeably thin. And whenever anyone has like pointed that out, up to like recently, I think that there has been a little bit of a change, but up to recently, her fans were extremely defensive. And because she made that video that was like, I'm healthier than the body you've been comparing my body to, there have been so many fans.
Do you think that's true? I think that could be true.
I think it could be true in some aspects, especially at that time that she made that video, because it was like
2 years ago.
She said the thing about like alcohol, she was drinking so much, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that health is something that is so complicated and there's so many different factors to your health.
Yeah.
But at the current state that she's in, I think that it just needs to be stated that like she has almost no body fat on her whatsoever.
Right.
And that is, by nature, that is unhealthy. Like, you have to have fat on you. Yeah. So and whether or not it's an eating disorder. I want to make it
clear that we agree something is happening. I think the issue is that because we agree something is happening, and I just don't think it's my business to say what's happening. It's my business to educate people and give them the tools that if you're suffering, if you need resources, if young girls are looking at her, if this, but like Ariana is not the problem. Ariana is a symptom of the problem.
Sure. But she's the thing that people are like looking at right now. And especially in my sphere because of like the pop music. Because that's where I've like seen people be like, oh, just ignore it. Like, just don't look at Ariana. And I'm like, okay, but if you follow like pop music accounts on any social media, they're posting videos of the tour. Like, it is not something you can totally escape from. Especially with her being on tour, where it's like just a regular thing of like every few nights she's going to be on a stage being filmed by people.
Yeah, I do think I see. I went through this phase because I grew up really, really fat phobic in a really fat phobic family. A lot of commentary on like from my parents, and that's who I'm mostly concerned about too. Is like, who are your kids listening to at home? Because I think there's a lot of fat phobia in our homes, and then it's reinforced by the internet and then by Ariana. And I think that's usually the hierarchy or the way that it goes. I think that what I learned when I was deconstructing fat phobia was also not to turn around and tell skinny people to eat a burger. And that's what I feel like I'm seeing a lot with Ariana, is a little bit of she's too skinny, she shouldn't be on tour, people should boycott, people should do this, all in the name of saving her. And I just feel like I use myself as an example a lot. Maybe it's the autism, but like if I came on stream, and I'm usually pretty transparent with my health stuff with my audience, but lately I've been trying to be more private. If I had lost an incredible amount of weight, and my audience was making think pieces about my body, I would be so fucking annoyed, because like I'm allowed to be sick and on camera. I'm allowed to be like, if I was really thin for whatever reason, I feel like I should be allowed to have an eating disorder and be in public. And it feels like I don't want to see think pieces about my body when I'm trying to work and do the thing that I love with a limited time on earth. I think that's the part that I can't imagine being Ariana and this being it really in the name of helping me. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, but I think at this point, it's not totally about helping her right now.
Sure.
Even though I feel for her a lot. And that's why I didn't really want to, even when the Wicked stuff was happening and there was some discourse around that, like I would make a comment here and there on stream if it felt appropriate, but I never wanted to like pause and be like, let's all talk about Ariana's body. Sure. Because I don't think that it's going to be helpful for her. But at this point, it is just so public and it's so out of my hands. And that's where I would again say that like with, if I have any sort of direct criticism of like what's happening with Ariana and what should be happening with Ariana, it's like with her team, like those are the only people that I would really want to reach and be like, can you please just like take this a little bit more seriously and not.
But what if they are like, what if they're sitting with Ariana and her doctors and Ariana's like, look, I'm sick. This is a lifelong struggle. I'm going to be this way till I die. I might die on stage, but I want to do this. Like I want to sing, or I want to do these things, or there's layers here, obviously, because we don't know. That's the problem. We don't know if she's under contract. We don't know if she's being forced. We don't know if these studios have her hands tied behind her back. We don't know if she's desperate to stop this tour, but she can't. We don't know if she's trapped. And instead, the best case scenario, she really wants to sing, but she's sick. The worst case scenario, she's got a gun to her head.
Sure. I think that it's probably, from everything that I've seen and like the interviews and stuff that I've seen and what I know about her and know about her like team, I think it is fair to assume at this point that it probably was her. She probably does want to be on tour to some degree. I think she really enjoys performing, and she has said that this is going to be her last tour for a while, because I think she is pivoting at this point to focusing a little bit more on acting, or just not focusing so much on being like a live performer. So I think that like, and that's kind of where, just looking at this from like a kind of fan perspective, even though I'm not like an Arianator, I'm not like a huge stan, but like I know her enough to be like, I do think that she wanted to do this. And that's where I sort of wish that like certain boundaries had been placed of like, because at this point we can say the whole thing about like maybe her doctors are, maybe she's talking with her doctors, maybe there's like a health plan in place. But at this point, I think even that is a little bit normalizing the situation, because at the state that she's currently in, with the it's next to no body fat on her whatsoever, if a doctor is allowing her to go out and exert those amount of calories and exert that amount of energy on stage regularly up until September, that doctor is not qualified. Like,
but aren't you saying that the only solution that's acceptable is that she isn't going on tour?
No, I don't think that's the only solution acceptable.
Okay.
I just wish that there had been like more boundaries put in place at the beginning of like, we're not going to support you and we're not going to go forward on this tour with you, because she can't do it on her own. It is something that other people have to agree with to an extent. Like, you can't throw it. The organization of a tour is not something that happens with one person.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we live in an ableist world. We live in a misogynistic world. And she's like a white privileged millionaire woman, right? Like, so she, out of all the people who have all the resources, it's her. And I understand this. My concern as a disabled person especially is I used to get feedback like, don't you think you're too sick to be a YouTuber and giving advice? Don't you think you're too fucked up? And I'm like, no. They're like, don't you think like you have, it's like when we have these conversations about, oh, everybody around her will make it impossible for her to do her job. How does this not become ableism? How does this not become...
See, this is where I'm like, I don't think it's not letting her do it at all. I think that like what I wish I'd have, because this is in what I see with Ariana is like, it is the same people that have been on her team the entire time. So like we can, for sure, if she really wanted to, she could switch teams. If like the people on her team were not down with it, she could switch, get new
Somebody's
managers,
got to pay their bills, right? Somebody needs a job.
Yeah, and still go forward with the tour. But like, it is the same people that have been around her the entire time. And I wish that they had, just from an outside perspective, and again, we don't know exactly what's going on, but I wish that they had put down more boundaries of like, we're not going to like support you in this unless like something specific happened, unless she was at like a slightly more physical weight, like a larger weight that could sustain something like this.
Why is that? Why? Run me through it. I'm asking autistically because I am autistic. Like, why though? I don't get it.
Because at the current weight that she's at, it's just something where like it is so dangerous. And so I wish that there had been a threshold of like, once we get to a certain point, and I don't know all the specifics of her health stuff and like where the line is of where this would have been safe for her to go through. I can just say that like, knowing how a human body works, that the weight that she's currently at is not something that's sustainable for like a very long time. Even if she gets all the way through the tour, it's just the amount of damage that something like that would do to your body is so irreversible. Sure. And so whatever threshold it would be, it's beyond, it's before this point. And so I think that for sure, like, she should be able to tour, and I think that she wants to tour. And I wish that had been used as like an incentive of like, we will support and we will go on this tour with you. Because this is the thing too, is like her family is going with her. And we can say this whole thing about like, no one should be commenting on her body or whatever, but like her family is commenting on her body on Instagram and being like, you look incredible. And so there is very clearly an element of...
Well, I think that's my dilemma though. If we know, listen, I'm not an expert in anything, for the record. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I need to say that. I don't have credentials of any kind that would allow me to talk about the human body or how it works or anything. But I would just say like, I trying my best to support my friends and people who are struggling. And I'm not going to hesitate to tell my friend they look good because they have an eating disorder. So it feels kind of weird to withdraw any compliments or any love or any support because somebody is sick. Because once again, like the theory, what I'm hearing from you is you're doing an ultimatum. I don't give people ultimatums. I think they're unethical. So we're giving Ari an ultimatum. Yeah. Like get healthy or no tour. And it's like,
I don't think it's get healthy or no tour. I think it's take steps or my specific support of the tour will not happen. You know, like I will not be going on tour with you. I will not be commenting. But this is the thing too, and this is something specifically about eating disorders, which is probably good to mention. When someone goes into recovery, what family and friends get told a lot of the time is do not make any comments on their body.
Sure.
Whether it's like a general comment of like, you look good, you look bad, because it's like telling someone with an eating disorder a lot of the time to like be conscious of the way that they look, period, can be incredibly damaging. So like there's just certain things that her parents are, well, her mother specifically is doing on Instagram where I'm like, this does not look like a situation in which this woman is taking Ariana's health that seriously, or that she even necessarily realizes what Ariana is going through. And this is another thing too, where I see why people would think of like, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know who's supporting her and what. We don't know who's encouraging her to get help. And we don't know exactly, but I can see some of the signs of like some enabling happening.
Sure.
But also, I think we also have to remember the fact that, number one, just the industry doesn't care about women, period. So the idea that like all these people are actually taking Ariana's help that seriously, it just feels a little bit
Why
like...
don't we go after them though? Why are we going after Ari? Why don't we go after them in a bigger way?
That's
some
what
of your
I'm saying.
rhetoric said, yeah, some of your rhetoric was that for sure. I heard that as well. I think the default though, like the thumbnails people are using in their videos,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
it is about Ari. Like that's all I'm hearing about, because I agree. But at the same time, like, I don't want to punish. I don't want people, because I heard the same rhetoric growing up about fat people. Like, they're too fat to be in public. They shouldn't be seen. They're so unhealthy. They're pushing this agenda on children. Like, it's so bad to be fat. Like, all of this stuff that I just don't know that we have the wisdom to discern the differences. And so that's my biggest concern, of course, is like, who's to say we have deconstructed enough to discern? Well, also, again, if the focus is on resources and the focus is on struggle, let's make it that. But I don't, like you said, Eugenia Cooney, I've never liked the commenting on her or talking about her. Like, how is that helping anybody, right? She's sick. That's it. Like, these are sick people. People are sick. I'm sick. Maybe you're sick. I don't know, but we're all sick. The question is, what is really going to help us? Like, only we know that.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure. But I think with Ariana and where I'm like more skeptical of the people around her is
Sure.
largely the fact that she is also a child star. And so I think that like we do have to remember that like, and it's not even, I don't want to completely blame her family or whatever, or like
But there is a pattern.
her mom, yeah, like her mom I think could maybe even just completely mean well. She doesn't have much of a relationship with her father, so he's not really a part of the conversation. But like I think her mother maybe completely means well, but doesn't know exactly, like, to put your child onto Nickelodeon at such a young age, you're not maybe someone who thinks about how specific, like, publicity and specific environments are going to affect your child.
I agree.
And so at this point, this idea that, like, everyone around her, maybe they're all helping her behind the scenes, I'm like, I don't have a whole lot of faith at this point that the people who are around her even know how to properly assess the situation and say that, like,
well, I think
a line has crossed.
So I'm with you on that. That's the part that I'm like, she was on Nickelodeon, the foot video, everything that's happened, her childhood, everything with, we just went over Jeanette McCurdy's book on our Discord for reading group last year. Like, we understand how horrible this industry is. I think that's my issue. It's like, we're trying to negotiate with an industry that is like inherently evil. So then it feels like, what is the content really about, and where is the concern really coming from? Correct me if I'm wrong. I wrote a note here that says, I think you said something in your video like she might die on stage or something. Was that correct? Was that a concern?
I mean, she could, I guess. I'm not so worried about her dying on stage. I think if anything happens on stage, maybe she'll like pass out or something. But like, I think that at this point where her body is at, I think that I do just want to emphasize of like, it's at a point where death is a very real possibility in the near future.
I have a question about this that I want to hear you, if you don't mind. I don't mean to interrupt, but like, okay, this is a difficult philosophical question. Everybody lock in, okay? I want to know, because what is the problem with her dying from her illness, realistically? And I mean that in a very philosophical sense. And why are we focusing on this one rich white woman and not the 100,000 Gazan children or the 9.5 million Sudanese or the, you know what I'm saying? I know you're a pop girly, so that's your focus. But isn't it interesting that we're not talking about the world's focus on this one singular person who has all of the resources versus all of these people? Like, where is really our leftist value here? Where's our philosophical good going, right? If it's always about this obsession about these pop girlies who have all of the resources, and is there a balance there that we can seek out? So when people die every day, the goal is to harm, reduce, and give them resources. But what resources can we really give Ariana is, I guess, the larger question.
I think for me, I mean, yeah, just the fact that I talk about pop girls in general, where it's like, it's already in front of me. So
Sure.
I'm going to be talking about it. But with Ariana, and where I think where it matters, whether or not she dies, is just the preventability of it, and the, where I struggle with the tour and everything is just because of the knowledge of how an eating disorder, if presuming that that's what's happening, how an eating disorder affects your decision making and how it gets reinforced by continuous, especially the thing is that once you start starving yourself, because of how your brain works and because of how food functions in your body, once you start starving yourself, it gets way, way easier to lose just general rationality about your body.
Sure.
Because your body is no longer getting the nutrients that it needs. And so it starts just reinforcing this idea of it doesn't need it. And so that's where I struggle with the tour's just existence in the first place, where I'm like, if she's on stage every night getting this reinforcement, it is almost certainly probably going to be making the issue worse, to a point where I'm like, does she even have the capacity to understand what the tour could be doing to her body?
Are you questioning her ability to give informed consent? Are you questioning her ability to consent?
A little bit.
Sure.
with the tour specifically. I don't think that she should have her autonomy taken away outside of that. I don't think that she needs to be put into I mean, I don't know. I'm not a part of her life. Maybe it gets to a point where that's a conversation people in her life could have. But at the current moment, with where she is maybe at with her disorder, does she have the ability to say whether or not this tour could kill her? I don't know. I would doubt it at this point.
Really? You would doubt it? You would doubt her ability to consent?
To this tour, to the kind of huge physical undertaking of something like this. To consent in her daily life, sure. She probably has that. I have no desire to stop her from filming a video or filming whatever else. But a tour that goes all the way to September, where she's exerting herself so much every day, I think it's a conversation that should be. This is my issue. It's not even I don't even want to say for sure what place she's at currently, because I don't know her. But my issue is I don't know if the people around her are thinking like that.
Sure.
Because I think that there's just so much profit being made from this that people aren't thinking about whether or not she's in a place to be making these decisions for something as huge as this.
Yeah.
And so that's where I just have this, again, it goes back to that eerie feeling of watching a pop girl that you've watched for so long be on a stage where it doesn't feel their decisions feel very self-destructive, and the people around them don't seem to care at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they don't care at all, but it doesn't feel like the motives are coming from that. It feels like
Sure.
the motives are coming from something else.
Right. Okay, two things. One, I just want to say, I said 100,000 Gazans, but there's 2 million people in Gaza. So, okay, don't come for me for numbers, guys. I was just throwing them out there. The second thing is, I do want to say that I am concerned about Ariana. I'm concerned for many people that are suffering. So I just want to say that too, if anyone's new to my audience. And I'm sure we both agree that we're concerned about people. We want people to be better, healthier, less evil. We want to give people tools. I can agree to a lot of these points. I think I hesitate to take away her agency, to say that somebody needs to intervene, to trust the people around her to do that. I do hesitate to not, I just keep seeing the ableism of it all in my mind, or the misogyny of it all in my mind, is like, I know better than this woman. She's obviously got something going on, whatever it is, and I'm here to support her endeavor in seeking health. I also know that we will lose our loved ones to a lot of different battles. And so part of me always wants to take balance with this. Like, how do we contend with the fact that a lot of our family members will lose their battle with addiction, with an eating disorder? And then how do we make sure that we give people the right tools with compassion, meaning to suffer with? And I just don't feel like I'm seeing from greater creators or other people on TikTok, like a lot of compassion. Like, they're not really suffering with her. They're yelling at her, and that feels strange to me, I suppose. And what's the message little girls are going to hear, little boys are going to hear, little they thems are going to hear? Like, what's the message we're all hearing? As a disabled person, I hear ableism. That's the message I'm getting, which is like, if I am sick, I can't be on stream, or if I lose enough weight, people are going to start thinking I can't support Brittany because she doesn't recognize she's sick. Maybe people want Ariana just to say, yes, I'm sick, I'm working on it. But if you guys all said that there's evidence she has an eating disorder, then you know she's sick. So what else do you want? Like, then she can come out and say, I'm going to sit in a chair all tour. Like, would that do it? And at that point, isn't she catering too much to the audience? You know, I'm trying to find the human part of it that's the most realistic, probably what's happening, but we don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's even like, I mean, we've been talking so much about like the tour and like her family and the decisions there. And like, I think that for me, as someone who engages in like speculative celebrity culture and stuff, and like just talks about like, we see situations, what do we think is happening here, what do we think should be happening here, it's like that is a part of the conversation for me, but to me it's still not the bigger part of like, I think that for me, I just really kind of wanted to open up to my own community and stuff of like, this is a topic that's no longer off limits when it comes to Ariana, of like,
For sure.
we see what's happening with her. And I think at some point, especially to prevent the normalization of it, we have to open up the conversation of like, at least let's all acknowledge that we notice what is going on. And especially when it comes to, and this is where it gets sticky with like the conversations around, I mean, number one, there's just the thing of like, she is very clearly in a physical state that we can no longer do this whole thing of like, maybe she's healthy and maybe, you know, because body weight isn't the be all end all of health. And I agree, a vast majority of the time it's not. But like when someone has no body weight, I don't think we can do the like, we don't know if she's what her physical health is. It's like, well, I can tell that her physical health is bad.
But are they saying, are people, when people say that, all I hear is like, I hear a multitude of things. Like, what do you think people are saying when they say that? Like, we don't know.
I think like at the beginning, it was a genuine, like, we don't know.
Okay.
Because that is, well, and I think it is genuine for a lot of people, period. But, like, I think it was a more informed opinion a bit ago because you don't know what someone's health is just by looking at their body and just looking at their body weight. Especially, and that's something that people do all the time with, like, quote unquote overweight people.
Sure.
Where they say that, like, if you're overweight, you're automatically unhealthy when that's not necessarily the case. But going the opposite direction, like being underweight in general is unhealthier than being overweight, you know, depending on the severity. And Ariana's at a severity where it's like, this obviously can't be healthy. And I think we have to acknowledge that at some point, because I do think that there is a large section of her fan base, especially, that feels very defensive of her and that wants to believe certain things. I think there's a large amount of her fan base that wants to believe that she actually could be healthy at the weight that she's currently at. And that's one of the like main things motivating me to talk about it in the first place, because I'm like, I don't want people to have this distorted idea that you can walk around the world with absolutely no body fat and there isn't a problem. Even if it's not specifically like an eating disorder, it is not a thing that your body can sustain for a long period of time. And that's where I am like, we have to talk about it at some point because of the amount of people that want to believe that you can have no body fat on yourself and be like a fully functioning human that has like a long life expectancy. It's just not really possible. That's not how our bodies work. And so that to me is like the biggest part of the conversation. Like we can have the conversation about the tour and her family or whatever, like who's enabling her, whatever. But like the bigger thing is just like, we can't keep looking at this situation and saying, maybe she's fine. Clearly she's not fully fine. Where exactly all the problems are coming in is a harder thing to assess, but like we have to all at least agree that like you have to have body or have fat on your body to be healthy in any regard.
Sure. I think like if I said like if people ask me like, do you think Ariana's fine? I was like, yeah, she's probably fine in the sense that she's probably in a position in which she has the resources and capabilities to do something about it. And she's not the focus or our worry. The worry would be something different and separate. You can have a personal worry, but as creators, as content creators with a platform, is our worry Ariana as much as it is the things surrounding Ariana? Because like, as an example, like I try to the best of my ability. Sometimes I miss the mark. Like if I'm going to talk about something like this, which it wouldn't really fit on my channel, but let's say we really talked about it, like eating disorders, we would talk to a specialist or we'd have a doctor on, or we'd, watch doctor TikToks. We wouldn't just talk about it. And even my audience has asked me like, can you interview? And I was like, I don't want to talk about, like, that's not what my channel does, but here are the resources for medical professionals. Because again, like, I think sometimes as YouTubers, we have to recognize, like, are we just talking out of our asses respectfully? And like, what does that mean? What is our moral obligation to our audience to not just share opinions we would share with our girlfriends? Because it's one thing to talk to your girlies and be like, Ari Def got an eating disorder, and a difference of coming on stream, you have an audience, you have a moral obligation to that audience, and then talking about it in a way that gives them actual resources rather than an avenue just to shit on Ariana Grande's eating disorder, which then shits on everybody else with an eating disorder and everybody else who's disabled or everybody else who's struggling or everybody else who identifies. Do you know what I'm seeing?
Yeah, and I do try to like, and part of I made the second video as a way to like somewhat police how the conversation is evolving, because I think that like yeah, it's good to like give people resources to specific like doctors' opinions and stuff, but I also don't want to make it too clinical, because then it becomes something of like, you have to think about it as this like, and it is a medical problem ultimately, but like, it is. I think that we need to also be able to have a conversation about it in a way that is a little bit more casual, because there are people in my community and stuff that have had eating disorders that have been able to like provide some aspects of like a perspective on certain things and what they're noticing with Ariana. And so I'm like, yeah, you can go to like a doctor's videos and like get this rundown of things that are happening, but also just by opening the conversation and having people engage in the conversation that have a more like personal experience with it, you are just sort of opening people up to understanding that like, and this is why I think even the conversation, I think my primary focus is on the lack of body fat and stuff, and not normalizing that and acknowledging that as like something that is visibly unhealthy.
Can we talk about that, I guess? Because like even in growing up in like very skinny bubbles, like I wouldn't argue that is as normalized, because then if you're too skinny, people tell you to eat a burger, right? They praise you for thinness, absolutely. But I don't think the skinniness that a lot of these girlies are, like our skinniness, isn't the one that's exactly being praised, except by people who are suffering from eating disorders / want to be that skinny. Like,
I don't think it's being praised generally in like the larger culture, but it is something that is adjacent enough to something that is being praised that more people are willing to overlook it than are willing to overlook, like, if she was what people would consider like morbidly obese on that stage, I think it probably would have been a bigger conversation than this is, I mean, there's already people making content about her body weight currently, but like if it went the other direction, it'd be like on Fox News and stuff. It would be something that like just people outside of like just commentary YouTube spheres would be like a huge conversation if it were.
Yeah, definitely. They would absolutely weaponize it. I am curious. We, in preparation for this convo, we watched a doc from SBS, which is Australia's public television, about thinfluencers, and one of the girls highlighted was hardly an influencer. She had a very small following, but she has been struggling with her eating disorder for so long that she just filled out a end of life form with her family. And basically, if she can't get into recovery, she would seek end of life care. And I think about it from this perspective, where I don't think eating disorders are just about being skinny. I mean, maybe they start off that way, but obviously, like, you got to be really motivated to starve yourself, girls. It's not exactly easy. So the mental place you are in order to not eat to that extent, to me, means that we're not dealing with girlies who are just looking for attention, or dealing with people of all genders who are just like something is warped in this their sense of self, and that deserves a lot of compassion and patience. But if people are seeking end of life care for eating disorders, then it has to be more than just people wanting to be pretty or skinny or whatever way they're marketing it. And that's my fear, is that we're talking about a woman who this might be her last year. We don't know that Ari hasn't made one of those contracts. Maybe Ari is going to appeal to the government and end her life, and this is her last tour to go on before that happens. And so if regular people are doing that, non-celebrity people are doing that every day, who's to say that Ari might not be one of those people? And so my concern is that we are forgetting that while talking about celebrities, this applies to people who aren't celebrities, and they're listening. So in the same way that you're concerned, ironically enough, right? Like, you're concerned about the audience, you're concerned about people watching her. And so I guess maybe I'm adding in that other perspective that I'm not sure a lot of people on the internet are ever paying attention to, like assisted suicide or something like that. Assisted ending life, I should say. But like, that's the lens I come from. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, with Ariana, I think that, I mean, that's a possibility that maybe she knows that this is her last tour. At that point, I do wish that she would maybe say something, because of the amount of people in her audience, specifically, like especially really young people in her audience that really want to cling to this idea of health, that like maybe she's healthy looking the way that she is. That to me is like the primary concern, where I'm like, if she knows that this is like maybe her last tour, the fact that she's just allowing that discourse to go on of people being like, no, she's healthy. It's like, okay, girl, I don't know that that's a good idea.
Well, she made a video where she explicitly said she's not going to talk her body anymore because she didn't like the way people responded to her. She has the right to that privacy. Even if you and I both think ethically as a public figure she should be doing more, I agree with you there. I don't know that we can ask her to do more in a world that will punish her for saying anything she says.
Well, I'm saying in like the specific scenario of like, she knows that this is her last tour and she knows that she's dying. Because I think that like, I don't ever want to make the assumption that she knows anything specifically.
Sure.
But if we're making like in this hypothetical scenario where she knows, then I'm like, at that point, what are you hiding from? Because especially we can be like, oh, well, then she'll just get attacked for that.
Well, maybe she's hiding public scrutiny, or people protesting her, or people freaking out, or maybe, there was this conversation I was asked, an audience member asked me, like, don't you think like people who commit suicide are glorifying it, and it's going to cause more people to commit suicide? And I just feel like, are we all forgetting that this is mental health? Like, are we forgetting that, like, it doesn't matter if the audience is so mentally ill, they romanticize eating disorders and suicide. The people suffering from these problems are suffering. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't kill myself now because somebody might kill themselves. Like, what are we talking about here? The people who are killing themselves, as a girlie who is formerly suicidal, no offense to everybody else, but like, you're not coming into consideration here. I'm the one killing myself. So it feels a little silly for us to sit here a little bit and say, like, you can't kill yourself, otherwise Susie will kill herself. Well, fuck Susie. I'm about to die. You know what I mean? And when you're in that state of mind, I mean, it's not like you're in a rational state of mind where you're like, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that like, and that's where I do try to like, I don't know what the word would be, like, I don't want to say spank my audience, but like I do try to sometimes like just keep them in check a little bit with some of the conversations, because I do think it's fair to point out, especially when people come with the line of like, let's not talk about it, it's Ariana's business, of like, it's something that is going to affect other people. So like, it's not just her business at this point. But I do think that it becomes different when we start specifically blaming her for it. And that's why even when I'm like doing any sort of criticism of the tour or anything, I try to keep it to like the other people, like the team that's profiting off of it, not her specifically. Because I think especially in the place that she's in, she maybe has no clue, because we don't know exactly, and eating disorders, presuming that it is one, like they function differently in different people's brains and what motivates them. And so it could be a vanity thing. She maybe thinks she looks better in a certain way. It could be a control thing. It could be a whole bunch of different stuff. It could be maybe not necessarily like anorexia. It could be like a food restrictive thing. Like there's a lot of different things, even though, I mean, she has had like a pro-Ana, there's indications of her being anorexic previously, so it's like there's some reason to believe that it's that, but like ultimately we don't know exactly what's happening in her brain. But I think that and where I do kind of like opening the conversation up to the audience is that there are things that Ariana has done that maybe do indicate that she has a problem with food intake.
Sure.
And I think that that is, and also with like body image and like body checking and stuff. And I think that there are instances where that's completely fair to point out, because it could be helpful to other people like in their own life, of like if they notice themselves doing certain things, if they notice their loved ones doing certain things. At the same time though, I don't like some of the ways that people talk about some of the things that she's done, like the body checking stuff especially. I think that there's a very fine line between pointing out where she could be body checking and then saying stuff about like she knows exactly what she's doing. She knows exactly the influence that she has on young girls. I'm like, does she though? I think, and I had this conversation with one of my own viewers of like the whole thing about her Instagram and her makeup and stuff, of like her highlighting certain things on her face to like emphasize like her specific bones, and like wearing certain outfits. Like it is clear that she is wearing a lot of like low cut stuff, and the like thinnest part of her at the moment is her chest.
Yeah.
So the fact that she's wearing a lot of low cut stuff, it doesn't seem like an accident. But at
Sure.
the same time, you have to think from like a disordered state of mind of, does she realize though that that's unhealthy? Because we all do stuff like that. Like we all wear stuff that we think we look good in. We all, like, if you wear makeup, you're wearing makeup to highlight the things that you want to like emphasize, the things that you think look good on you. Does she recognize highlighting those bones as like highlighting her emaciation? I'm not sure. I don't think that that's something we can assume that she realizes, because especially, I mean, she did make the video saying that she was healthier, and I don't know where her mind isn't on that now, but I wouldn't be surprised if she genuinely does not think she has a problem. And so I don't think we can just sit here and blame her and be like, she should know the influence she's having on young girls. I'm like, does she know the influence she has on herself? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it's a balance between not infantilizing her, but also recognizing how we all, I mean, gosh, even as an autistic woman, I give myself so much credit for being so socially aware. And then sometimes I just miss the mark so badly that I'm like, what was that? And then you deconstruct, you introspect, you realize what it is. But the skill of introspection, of extrospection, like that is a skill we are en masse not taught. That is something I had to go out and seek out. And thank goodness I have philosophy autism. So like it was more than, a happy thing for me to do. But in regards to taking control back, this reminds me, because my chat is bringing it up as well, like neurodivergency, eating disorders, having a problem with like consuming certain textures, just having like an aversion to food. There's so many layers here. And that's why I'm trying to be so like compassionate and nuanced while we have the convo, because it worries me that Ariana could be suffering from so many different things, that we're doing this thing where we're talking about eating disorders. Like it was so prevalent growing up for me as a kid in the 90s, 2000s, that eating disorders, and look, no matter how skinny I get, I don't think I'll ever have a body like Ariana's. Like she has a very specific build. It's very ballerina. It's very small and petite. It's very like, no chest, it's a very specific build. And that build was very desirable when I was younger. It was a very desirable build. And, you have to deconstruct all of that. The desire to want to look petite and pretty and like Ariana and fragile in a sense, because that's a part of patriarchy, right? The fragile aesthetic of a woman who needs to be rescued, or a woman there's a lot of places here. I think one of the things that I want to believe is that maybe in some ways they're dressing the way that they are in order to take some sense of control back. Like I deserve to exist in my body. And maybe in some ways, if I was in that position, and I wouldn't be necessarily, so it's hard for me I don't want to speak out of turn, but maybe I would wear clothes that hid my body from the world and nobody would ever know what it looked like. But then I have to think like, damn, that's really going to trigger my PDA. And fuck it, I'm going to wear a bikini if I want to wear it. So then there's like these layers. I had a thought and I lost it just as I was speaking, which is so neurodivergent of me. Oh, shoot, I don't remember. Thoughts?
I mean, no, I have no thoughts. It's like, I don't know. That is what a lot of it boils down to, is like, I don't know. But I think that, especially being in celebrity culture, there is an element of like, this is another person's life, that there should be lines about what we're willing to speculate on. At the same time, we do speculate on things related to pop culture and related to celebrities all the time, and use it as like a reflection of how we feel about certain things. And so it's like, I can't really draw the line at Ariana just because it could be a more sensitive topic, and
I don't
because
want us
there's
to.
more mystery.
I don't want us to. I I don't like the way the conversation is going or the thumbnails people are using or the
Oh yeah, the thumbnails are atrocious.
they're horrible. Or I just don't even like the narrative that people are getting so many fucking views by titling their videos like the conversation we can't have when everyone's having it. And I know you brought that up, I think, but I think everyone is having it.
We're definitely having it now. I think that like that was a more kind of appropriate title. The irony of it is like it kind of broke through with everyone making their videos titled that at the same time, because it's like,
Sure.
as soon as the tour started, it became just this thing of like, all right, no more like not talking about this. But I do think that that was a much bigger sentiment around the Wicked promo. But the Wicked promo was something where like, I mean, she's gotten thinner since then, for one thing. Like
She has gotten thinner because before I went to go see part 2, people were upset about the jewels on her collarbone. But then when I went to go see the movie, she looked fine in the film. I didn't think she looked very like that alarming in the film. I don't know if they edited her or something, but I didn't think she looked that alarming. I mean, she's a skinny girl. A lot of my friends suffer in industries where eating disorders are prevalent. We have to deal with fat phobia in society. A lot of people are wanting to be skinny because they want that aesthetic. It's rewarded by a lot of the way we have these conversations. And so like I understand all of this. It feels like there is a way to have this conversation without it becoming I'm entitled to know Ariana's health or / her diagnosis so much as something's wrong. So what do we do when people are publicly sick? And how do we make it so they don't have to hide away and be caged? That's my concern. You know, sorry, I think I cut you off for your mid-thought, maybe.
Oh no, I don't remember what my thought was. But I think, yeah, and I don't want her to be like caged, but I also am so disturbed by the like increasing spectacle of it that is
Sure.
paired with a tour that is going to be running up until September. Like these images are just going to keep coming out and coming out. And she it most likely will be getting thinner the entire time. And so that is something that like, and there's just a lack of control that like you feel as an audience member watching something happen, and especially like it is just depressing as and that's why I don't want the conversation to be too centered around her specific decision making or anything, but like especially as like as a fan, as you know, a fan of hers, not like a super huge stan, but like I like the music. I'm looking forward to the album. I'm a fan of hers. Like I want to pay attention to what she's doing. And then just as a fan of like pop music in general, of just this constant gnawing feeling of like, we are watching women diminish themselves and waste away in this industry that will continuously prioritize making money off of them versus respecting their humanity. And I do want to respect Ariana's humanity enough to like give some amount of like, we don't know exactly what's happening, but also at a certain point we just have to have conversations amongst each other of like, but there's something happening for the sake of our own like mental health and our own understanding of like what is and what is not good for our own bodies. Like
Sure.
The amount of just people that want to believe that there could be an instance in which you get down to the weight that Ariana is at and you are not in dire need of like a change in or like maybe not a change, but like because it could be some other illness or something. I don't know that it is for Ariana, but for other people it could be something beyond like a lifestyle change that could, or like a recovery for a specific eating disorder, like mental health thing. It could be something that is more physically rooted. Mm-hmm. But like just the idea of like that body could be something that sustains you. That's what disturbs me the most of us all looking at it and just sort of averting our eyes and being like, I don't know, you know, if that could be okay, you know.
Sure.
That's my main thing.
Yeah. So what conversation could we have that doesn't make it about Ariana, but that makes it about helping people who might be uneducated and unaware that this isn't body goals in terms of health, but is a situation you might find yourself in. So what's that conversation look like?
Well, I think for me, especially because again, like I do like the pop stuff, it's going to come up with the Ariana situation. And I think if that is the thing that helps people get into those other conversations, that's good. And I think it's like something that like you can start from a perspective on Ariana and then go out and talk about these larger issues. And I think that's really where I think the conversation should be moving, you know, like start with Ariana, move outward. And I think especially with these other content creators, it doesn't feel like there's an interest in the surrounding.
Yeah. Would you be willing to try it out with me? Like, let's do it. Let's have that convo. So Ariana's the catalyst. She's the platform. She's the jumping off point to have this larger conversation. So like, what can we learn from the Ariana situation? Like, what do we take away from this? Like, what's the message we want to send out to our viewers? What's the larger conversation we can have about it?
I mean, I think the larger thing is just understanding that, like, in a very clinical sense of understanding that not eating and like getting to a certain body weight is not something that is sustainable. But then also there are specific things of, and this is where, and like if we're using Ariana as the example to move off of, and this is where things get sticky, is understanding how these behaviors develop over time and how they get kind of normalized. Like, I know we're trying to move off of Ariana, but like to put it back and give this example, like the old clip of her licking the donut and then saying stuff about like America's disgusting. Like there was some stuff around that era where there is an idea of like America's obesity and like the disgustingness of it and how gross this country is for liking donuts. And that's stuff that I think we really have to be a little bit more aware of in how we associate both like morality and also just general health with your body weight, you know?
Definitely.
And that's like a thing about America in general, that we are like, you know, the fat country. And it's like, there's a lot of problems with America. I don't know that that's the biggest one, you know?
Yeah.
The fact that we're kind of fat, it's like, okay, aren't there worse things to be?
Yeah.
And, and also, go ahead.
Please.
I was gonna say, and also like, I mean, I was seeing stuff from some of the like Ariana stans that were doing like AI photos of her being like fat, and they're like, oh, is this what you want her to look like? And it's like, well, but
damn,
would that be that terrible? Why is that like the fear? We have such a fear of being fat. And I Definitely. Even if we want to take this back even to Hassan has said quite a lot of things even recently where I'm like, whatever's happening in Ariana's mind, we don't know exactly what's happening. There are things that Hassan says where I'm like, Hassan has an eating disorder.
Well, he has openly shared his eating on leftovers. He specifically told Ethan Klein that, I can't have sweets in the house. He has tons of clips saying he used to be a fat kid. He suffers. And look, I'm West Asian like Hassan is. We're both West Asian. And fat phobia is very rampant in West Asian households. It's everywhere. It's not just in our media. It's our mothers. It's our fathers. It's our cousins, our aunties. And like, the dilemma I'm having here is that my fear is like, Hassan didn't just get it from the outside, and not to mention the validity he gets, the validation he gets from people saying he's so hot, he's so hot, he's so hot. He's moving into that narrative so hard, and it's associated with him getting into shape, right? So like his hotness, so that's all connected. Yeah, but that's why I deeply wish Hassan would go to therapy and do the work, but also what would happen if that happened? Because like, look, if Ari goes and does the work, if Hassan does the work, it will ruin their careers. It will stop everything dead cold. And right now, like I would advocate for them to do this and recognize like it's a lot harder. I also hold on. I want to say to my audience and anyone new who's watching, and this is how I have the conversation with my audience. You are not a bad person for having an eating disorder. You're not a bad person for struggling with food. You're not a bad person for struggling with weight. Like nothing about you having an eating disorder makes you a bad person. Like, I do not want to associate any form of illness with evil or morality, because a lot of conservatives I grew up with, they'll say, like, I don't want to pay for people's health care because people purposely get fat or they purposely do drugs or they have all these medical problems. I want you to always know nothing about your character is reflected in your addiction, in your eating disorder, anything like that, in my opinion. And if we start from that place, we can take away the moral judgment from Ariana, I think, because there's a lot of morality. There's a lot of moral judging her. And I understand that Hassan has an obligation to his audience to be a leader. I think the difference for me is that first you have to have those beliefs. So Hassan is a leftist, so I hold him to a higher standard. Ariana is anti-Trump, which we love to see, but I don't know really if she's that much of a leftist, you know, or if she's that much of a feminist, or she's that much of a. So what I try to do is I try to see where people's philosophical framework is, and I meet them where they are with that. And then I tell my audience, here's our goal, here's where she is. So Hassan, he's advocating for something, I can hold him to a higher standard. I don't know, or a different standard, I should say, and maybe not higher, but like specific. But I wouldn't necessarily know how to do that in other bubbles. I would have to see the bubble. So with Ari, I don't know what her standard is. I don't know what her expectation of behavior is. You know what I mean? And also, out of all the things we should be moralizing about Ari, it's maybe her tendency to blackfish and maybe like race bait and maybe like all the racist shit she's done over the years. Like that's much more concerning to me than her having an eating disorder. But it's interesting that we're just focusing on her illness rather than the harm she's done to marginalized people. And so that's,
well,
you know,
I think that's definitely like a separate conversation that should be had. But well, especially with the eating disorder stuff, and this is where I try to also be clear with my own audience of like, we're not trying to moralize what Ariana do. We're not trying to like assess the ethics of Ariana as a person being on that stage. We can discuss maybe the ethics of the people around her who are making money off of this. But like Ariana is not someone who I think that we need to be focusing on like what her complicity in it is, because if she's the person with the disease, presuming that she has an eating disorder, I don't know that that sort of morality is even going to come into her mind. But especially with Ariana, it's like, I think that it's fair to point out some of the behaviors that could be indicative of an eating disorder, especially as it relates to like other people, maybe understanding a little bit more of like their own behaviors, and that might be indicative of a problem, or their loved ones' behaviors. With Hassan, though, Hassan specifically says things where I'm like, you are promoting in like an eating disorder rhetoric there.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he realizes it. And I have some compassion there of like, I don't think he's deconstructed that for himself. And you're right, he needs to go to therapy. But like, it's the fact that he's saying this stuff on mic is like,
yeah.
Can you stop associating health with your weight?
Yeah, he talks about he's fatphobic, he's ableist, he's racist. He does all of the things. Here's my dilemma though, because chat and you are saying you guys aren't judging her. There's no morality here, but we're not asking to take away Hassan's. Some
people are.
But listen, I'm not asking to deplatform Hassan because he has an eating disorder. But we are saying that about Ari because her eating disorder is maybe at a different stage. But like, that's what I'm saying. We have no business to talk about not touring with her, going after the companies, not letting them do this to her any more than we would with anyone else with an eating disorder. Like, why are we going after Ari's eating disorder and nobody else's eating disorders? Because we've somehow decided she's too sick?
I mean, kind of. I think that like the physicality of it is the thing that is the most concerning of like the longevity of.
How is this not like inappropriately parasocial though? What's the line? How do we know? How do we discern?
I mean, it's parasocial in a huge way. I think like where it would become inappropriate for me is if you start advocating to Ariana or to like someone directly. Like if we're having these conversations amongst one another, it's like whatever. But like if you're actively like seeking Ariana out or actively seeking specific people out to be like, you need to do this or that, then it's like that's where it kind of crosses the line for me. But like where we're sitting at a full distance and just discussing it, I'm like, the conversations we're having amongst one another is not like a directly impactful thing.
Then why have them?
Not directly.
Then why have them?
Just for one another to like for the catharsis of like us all being able to, again, for me with like the pop star aspect of watching women suffer, it's like I need the catharsis at some point. I need the space to like say to other people of like, I can see what's happening. You see what's happening. Aren't we all sad about it? Like there is just a value in us all collectively somewhat mourning this situation. But then also the larger conversations about like how certain things are getting normalized culturally. And especially I do think like going off of Ariana and then talking about the larger cultural stuff, trying to reframe the idea that health is equated with thinness in general. which is something I think we all kind of need to deconstruct, especially in America where fat phobia, and I'm sure it's like other places too, but like I can only speak as an American, like fat phobia is something that we use to like litigate morality, and it's something we use to litigate like
there were ugly laws like disabled. That's what I'm afraid
Yeah.
of. There are ugly laws. Like there have been, I mean, I'm worried that this rhetoric is going to be Ariana shouldn't be seen in public because she is not what we want to look at. And because like looking at like, not to bring anyone, I won't mention anyone's names, but like a woman made a video and she made a video saying that Ariana's body was like scary. And I was like, stop using words like scary, because like what that says, again, you don't know what people are going through. Not everyone who has there are people who look like Ariana who have something else, and all they're hearing is my body looks scary. Your bodies do not look scary. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're perfect. You don't need to be pretty. You owe no one beauty. Okay, but like you're fine. You're neutral. And I hate this rhetoric that we're forgetting like Ari's not the only person in the world with this body type, and other people are suffering for a lot of different reasons. And so it's just painful, I think, to watch it. Now, again, I think the conversations can be had. It's hard to have it though, isn't it? Right? It always goes back to Ari. We can't get it out of the Ari. So that's why I say the skill of using somebody as the jumping off point is a skill, and I'm not sure the internet has it.
Yeah, a vast majority doesn't. And I think that there's also there's a difference too, and where I try to emphasize the entire machine around Ariana. I think there's like a huge difference between saying like the situation is scary and that Ariana's specific body is scary.
Sure.
Because it would be a fully different thing. And again, like I think that her body looked similar in the music video for Hate That I Made You Love Me. And like that worries me way less than like the tour. So it's like a situational thing of what's happening and the mechanisms of a huge international tour like that. And so like focusing on the situation versus focusing on specifically her body, because it's not like her body is just existing, period.
Yeah.
I mean, some people would be talking about it even if it was just like, you know, paparazzi photos.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think that's where our conversation should ever start, is if it was just Ariana existing, period. It's specifically the circumstances around what is currently happening.
What about just existing sick? Like, are we not allowed to exist sick?
No, I think you are. I think you absolutely are. But I also, you know, I think like
assuming she's getting stuff helped and stuff like that. That's the problem, is we don't know this lady. So let's say we assume she's doing all the proper things. Does she not exist? Like, is she not allowed to exist in public type thing, or take risks?
This is where I'm like, where I would go back to just the conversations about the tour, is that I worry about framing she could be doing the proper things around what's currently happening, because the tour would just be so detrimental to someone. If we're presuming that she has an eating disorder, it would be so detrimental to the physical and mental state, because of just how eating disorders function. And
are you coming, like, again, I'm going to hold our feet to the fire. I am not a medical professional. I don't know what that means. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know how we could sit here with our microphones and make that statement and not know how that's impacting all these other people who are making judgments. Like, when are we, like, wasn't it always supposed to be like about abortion or transition? It's up to the doctors and the patients. How are we not being conservative here about interjecting into people's medical care? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think like the understanding that I have of eating disorders in general, and which I've, you know, I'm not a doctor or whatever, but like I have done a fair amount of research in it prior. Just how I understand how eating disorders function, period. I struggle with the idea that something that puts you in front of this many people on a live stage every night, or not every night, but like many nights a week or a month or whatever, like the idea that couldn't be, that wouldn't be fueling the disordered part of the brain that tells you to be so conscious of your body, because that's what performing is. It's like being conscious of your body in the moment, and then also like the cardio on top of it that accompanies this kind of tour. And then even like the discourse that we're having, like I'm very well aware of the fact that like the amount of discourse that currently exists about Ariana's body is almost certainly going to be making her condition worse, because that is something that a lot of eating disorders thrive off of is like the concern. And so I am aware that like that is a risk of the conversation period, is like what's happening with Ariana specifically, but I don't think that that needs to come at the cost of like us all being aware of what the issue looks like in the first place, and being aware of how eating disorders get worse. And that's where like, just again, this idea that the tour exists as this thing that could be like morally neutral. And I think it is for Ariana, but just for all of us to look at it, to not understand how that would specifically fuel an eating disorder, supposing she has one. Like, if you have these disordered habits, putting yourself into situations in which you're going to be gawked at all night. They have their cameras out looking at you. You're aware of your body. You are.
For sure.
I mean, that is so specifically what a performance is like the kind of performance that Ariana does, is knowing what her body looks like at every single moment. It's like that in itself is so deteriorating and I mean, so enabling.
There's a conversation to be had. I have friends in a lot of dance industries, ballet, art industries, and eating disorders are rampant. And the conversation is this industry itself, should it be dismantled? Is there ever a healthy way to be on stage, go on tour, not see your family, be on the road, be away from I mean, I could say no. I could say like, actually, there is no way to go on tour and be healthy. And that's the conversation. So now we need to moralize the word healthy. Like now we're moralizing this word that like, what does it mean? I feel like philosophical health looks like being in balance with yourself, being actively suffering. If you're suffering, if you have a more extreme version of suffering, like maybe you're an active eating disorder, it's still being joyful within that framework for as long as you can, because a lot of us, we're struggling with things nobody knows about. We're all struggling in private. Chadwick Boseman, I know we talked about that. You talked about that in your video. Like he was worried he would lose his Disney contract if he came out with cancer. He was worried about the way the media would embrace it. He was worried about not having money for his family. So he tried to secure income for his family long term. Ari's wealthy. She could quit right now and be good. But it's much more nuanced than that, I think. So I think we need to talk about the moralization of healthiness, because we keep saying like we just want people to be healthy. When I say that, I don't mean physically healthy alone. I mean like well-rounded human being, understand these things fluctuate. If you have active, if you're bipolar or schizophrenic or BPD, or you have any, even autism has moments of, I'm having a meltdown, like I can't be healthy all the time, but even within when I'm out of balance, I'm still in a healthy zone. So we're trying to get into a healthy zone. And the question is, I could never know what that is for Ari, but I would know what it was maybe for our family and our friends. We could talk about it. So like, how do you separate, like I always think people who make content about Eugenia Cooney are absolutely, like you said, if we're making videos and it's attributing to Ari, but you're doing it for catharsis, is your catharsis more important than the overall message we're sending out? Like, why do we need to, as public figures, seek catharsis in public spaces? Do you have a private Discord you could go to instead? Should we be making content? Should we do it more behind closed doors? Like, where does the line get drawn? How do you discern that? How do you decide that?
I mean, it's hard to decide it, and it's hard to discern it. And I didn't. I mean, I had thoughts about everything that was happening prior to the tour and everything. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but it's like that's where the line was for me, and I think where it was for a lot of people. But it's not. It's never a clear thing, and it is sort of even just a trying to. It is. I don't want to like moralize the idea that you should be healthy, but my primary concern is just the fact that like I think especially with the current state of. And especially right now, I mean, we've been sort of just talking about American culture and stuff in general and the fat phobia and that. But like, especially right now, I think a lot of people in this country have a distorted idea of what healthy does look like. And it is getting increased. It is moving very much back into where we were in like the 2000s of like really associating like a very particular kind of thinness with health, and especially with like Ozempic and stuff, and that shit getting really normalized. And I'm not against like Ozempic existing. I think that it probably is healthy for a lot of people, but it is something that is getting looked at as this miracle drug specifically because it makes people not as fat. And that is a little bit like worrying of like, why are we so obsessed with becoming fat? As if it's like, as if that's the biggest thing that is going to affect like how you interact with the world. And especially, I mean, you had mentioned a bit ago, and I wanted to bring it up then, but we just kind of moved off something else. You said something about how, and you're right about like if someone is making this effort to lose this amount of weight, it's not just as simple as like they're just deciding to. However, and I don't know, I don't want to speculate too much on like who is and who isn't on Ozempic, but if you are taking those drugs, it is very easy to make the decision because what those drugs do is they cut your appetite. Like they make it so that you don't even really think about it throughout the entire day. And so that is something that is also very worrying about where we are at in our culture. And Hassan was even talking about that recently. I saw a clip of him saying that he's going to go onto one of these drugs because he wants to cut out the food noise. And I saw something the other day of like someone talking about that, and they had gone on to Ozempic to cut the food noise, and as soon as they go off of it, it just comes back so quickly. Yeah. And I feel that, I mean, I'm on like ADHD medication that does...
shout out neurodivergent girlies over here. Okay, girl.
Yeah, it does like take away my appetite, and I try not to take it a few days a week just because I'm like, I want to make sure that like on the days, like those are my eating days, really. I know that that's probably not the healthiest way to live of like, I'm only gonna, and I do eat throughout the day on other days, but like for sure the days that I'm on the medication, I am eating less because I'm not thinking about it.
Sure.
I just don't have the appetite. So I don't think about it. And then on the days that I don't take it, it is just like a rubber band effect where I'm like, I want to eat everything around me. And I just kind of let myself indulge in that just to keep some like equilibrium. But there's a lot of people who go onto these drugs and they are terrified of going off of them because they know that like the food noise is going to come back and they're not going to be able to control whether or not they want to eat food. And they like the one jab is the control of like, I do this jab and then I'm not going to think about it. And it sort of removes even the strain of what someone who has like an eating disorder but doesn't have Ozempic. It removes even a lot of the tension there of like, I'm not thinking about it at all. And that is really, I don't know. And like, I think that the drugs should exist. I think that there are people on them who really get a lot of benefit from it, but it's really worrying to me the amount that we are moving toward this idea that not wanting to eat is good. It's not. Like you need to eat. You're a human being.
I hear that. First of all, I really appreciate you sharing what you have because it helps me also put it into perspective. Like ADHD, I know you said you maybe weren't as disabled. I mean, I do consider it a disability, but I also know it's different for everybody, so I don't want to put that on you. But it adds a layer to your relationship with everything. It's very interesting how neurodivergent brains process information. So thank you for sharing that. And I would say that I have my days too where I just don't feel like eating and I'm like, I guess I'm not eating today. They're not often, but they happen and for different reasons. And I call them my like it is what it is days, and I listen to my body. So I do intuitive eating for the most part. So I do count calories when I'm in like moments of thinking I'm not doing well because I have gym goals, but I am trying to get bigger and muscular. It's hard because I don't get enough protein. I'm on a plant-based diet. It's a whole thing. But I have to pay attention to what I'm eating. So it does kind of like ruin eating for me sometimes when I'm too meticulous about getting my stuff. So I try not to do it if it's going to ruin it. My rule of thumb is like, if it's ruining the vibe, we're done. Next thing. But also I don't fight my body. So if my body is really, really hungry and it just wants to eat, I let it eat. If it's really, really not feeling it, I don't make it eat. And that's kind of what I do is I kind of respect the relationship I have with my body. And I find that to be very helpful instead of trying to stick to a regimen where I eat 3 meals a day and everything has to be perfect and I have to get this many calories. I'm like, I'm going to try to listen to my body because, if you get a period, you need more iron. A lot of time you need more food. And some people, like, they try to stick to their, quote, health diet while they have a period. But, like, it's really helpful to eat more, to give yourself care. So that's, and by the way, this conversation has now become an actual conversation separate from Ari. And I don't know if you noticed, but we did it. We finally got to the point where the conversation now really is about our lived experiences. It's about tools we've utilized. It's about taking those tools and making our life better. And it's about the compassion of knowing that all of our brains are functioning differently. And we just don't know what we're going to need in the moment. And it's ever changing. For me, it is a day-to-day journey, girl. I wake up every day and I check in with my fibro. I'm physically disabled. My autism. I check in with every part of my brain and go, what are we doing today? Because God knows. Who knows? It's always a mystery. Now imagine you're doing that, and I could not do what Ari does personally because I'd be collapsed. My spoons could not take it. So it is kind of beautiful to see that at the end of the day, this really is about us all functioning differently. You know what I mean? Did I also move us away from what you were saying earlier?
I don't know, what was I saying earlier?
You know what? That's how this goes. It'll probably come back. But yeah, like, any thoughts on that? Are you, like, anything you want to share?
I mean, I think that, like, and where I'm like, I think that the conversation should move off of Ari, but I also do just want to emphasize that, like, I think that there are a lot of people who have found value in recognizing patterns around Ariana, especially people who, like, specifically have, like, eating disorders and who have anorexia, have had, like, a, because if we want to talk about, like, you know, the catharsis of it, whatever, like, I don't think it's just, like, my catharsis specifically. I think it's, like, leading a conversation for other people to have these conversations, like, you know, in the comment section, in the chat, in whatever, or just, like, conversations amongst one another and breaking down the barriers of, like, what is acceptable and not acceptable to talk about. And I think that was what was a little bit and now it's swung in a different direction where, like, prior to the tour and everything, I think that there was, like, a barrier around, we don't want to talk about this because it feels impolite, or it feels like it's too much of a hindrance to Ariana. Now some of the conversation, now that people have broken down those barriers, now the conversation is, like, how people trying to moralize and specifically make Ariana, like, a villain for something in a different way that is problematic in the other direction. And then it sort of becomes, like, litigating within that conversation of, like, what is and what isn't acceptable, to, like, talk about, if you're already deciding to have the conversation, like, where are the barriers of it? And I think that there is a value in that, in using that as a space to, like, litigate what we think about where the barriers are, of, like, what we're blaming people for and what we're acknowledging, like, the influence of something, while also not making the influencer the main problem. But especially moving off of her and just talking, because it's like all of it sits within this larger context of, you know, we've been talking about Ariana, but it's like there are just so many, and I think the reason that it's Ariana is because it's the most it is the most, like, stark example at the current moment, because of the circumstances of the tour and, like, the current state of, like, we've watched her body get smaller, but, like, it sits in a larger context, even in that, of, like, all of the, like, not all, but, like, a lot of the pop girls and a lot of just, like, female celebrities, period, we've just been watching shrink over these last, like, what, 2-3 years or something. Probably 2 years safely, but it's been just bad. And it's awful that Ariana has to be the representative for it because of the specific circumstances around her. But, like, it is hard to say when we've crossed the line with other celebrities. Like, I mean, I put up a video last night of Katy Perry, and there was a part in my brain that was like, should I acknowledge the fact that Katy Perry also looks like she's got, like, lost a significant amount of weight too? Is that productive? I don't know, because it is just something that is happening to so many people, and so many women in particular. And and I think the conversation sometimes gets rooted around, and I don't like this, but I understand it because of the Ozempic conversation, because of the conversation of, like, this new technology that is making it so much easier and can be so enabling to an eating disorder. It's like Ozempic is a huge part of that, but then it becomes in a similar way of, like, there's reason to talk about the Ariana thing, and then there's places where it goes too far. There's reason to talk about the impact of Ozempic on the current body standards and beauty standards, but then also there becomes, like, a weird thing of people just wanting to speculate if who specifically is on Ozempic and who isn't. And it's like, but we don't know. And it's, you can have an eating disorder with or without Ozempic, you know,
Right.
it
Right.
helps if you have one, but people could just as easily be starving themselves the old-fashioned way. Or not even starving, but like, you know, there's so many different binging and purging and
Yeah.
restrictive food, you know, it is so complicated, but it's like we have this one new technology that is making so much of it so much easier. And that is a hard thing to reckon with, of like, what is the impact of that overall?
Yeah, I think that's the dilemma because I know I covered Kelly Osbourne as well, and I took somebody had written an article or like an Instagram post rather about it being like body fascism, which there's a conversation to be had about that. I do think the dilemma is like, and I mean this so respectfully, that there is just a level of deep analysis that needs to be had for us to seriously tackle any of these problems. Much like we see with anything else we tackle, from racism to homophobia to transphobia, like it's never the surface level conversation that like I'm sorry, like regular people are having. We have to have a deep analysis about why these things happen, and we have to come from it from a non-judgmental place, and that includes no punishment, because I think that sometimes we default to punishment, which is genuinely how I see taking the tour away from Ariana. The question is not to take it from Ariana or give her an ultimatum in my mind. It's to encourage people to make decisions even if they feel ashamed or they feel like they're not like giving the fans what they need. It's making a safe space for them to make that decision on their own. And I think that's really hard because some people feel like, well, they're not going to make it on their own, I have to make it for them. But I just find that in the work that I do or the people that I've dealt with, and this is anecdotal, of course, so then, you know, we have to go to the professionals, is that I just feel like giving people the choice and making sure it's their choice is much more powerful than holding people down and handcuffing them into the direction you want them to go into. Extreme cases, maybe we can have conversations about it, but ultimately, I just don't think she's one of those cases. I don't think her dying from the eating disorder is the extreme case I'm thinking of, because I do believe she has the agency and the ability and the privilege and the resources to make different decisions when she's ready, because I also don't believe in free will. So I don't think humans actually have the free will to choose. I think we have a combination of being in the right moment in time to make a different decision that wasn't available to us before, but I don't really believe in free will. So I'm giving her a chance as an animal on a planet to eventually come to the right situation where it's almost like a locking key or like a puzzle piece. Once it fits in, a new path will be open to her, and whether or not she walks down it, like that at that point is her quote choice. But I'm not sure she has it right now because of the way that her mental health is going to be impacted, kind of like you said, maybe by the possible eating disorder or her reasoning for why she's in it. And I don't like the comparisons I've seen with her and Cynthia, which is like, oh, I guess it wasn't Cynthia, it was Ari after all, because Cynthia apparently has gained some weight and she does muscle building stuff and she's a gym girly. And I don't like those conversations either, because like, what's the point of this conversation? I also don't appreciate there's a content creator who does like, he was a formerly obese person who's now in shape, I guess. And he makes this content always talking about people's bodies. And it just like, this kind of content feels crazy to me. Like it just is so unethical and immoral to sit there and like, just, oh, I think she's not eating enough. And I think it's an eating disorder. And I think he's eating too much. And it's just like, yo, like I could even imagine making that my living, but I think he made it his living because he too suffered. And so he wants to help people. So just one last thought, and then we'll kind of like maybe bring it home and wrap it up or wherever we're at. But I think just like some people might need a catharsis, a space to talk about these issues and might, you know, share the one opinion and have eating disorder problems. There's other people with eating disorder struggles who have the opposite opinion. And so the question is, how do we discern and how do we collect all the right information from everybody to get to the right answer? All of us have good input. All of us have real lived experiences. All of us have wisdom to share. How do we take all the wisdom out of our biases and our prejudice and actually come up with a solution that helps move our community forward? So there's a standard of how we talk about people and a standard of how we have these conversations, and then we adhere to that standard. You know, like we don't use certain, you know, slurs that maybe were normalized years ago. Kind of same thinking. We don't have that that is not in the conversation anymore. We've already learned. Okay, now how do we learn how to talk about people's health and their bodies without engaging in some standard that is unacceptable?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of like what I don't know. It's something that I'm interested in and I want to like think about. And my thought originally when I first started talking about Ariana or like made the first stream was like, I just want to say how I'm feeling and then just kind of like, and open it up for my community to talk about it as well and be like, okay, we've all decided that like this is a fair thing to acknowledge at this point. But then after that, it's like, there is so much conversation around it, and I think that it's such a new conversation for a lot of people that haven't really even, because we don't have these conversations very often culturally of like really how eating disorders function and like really where the line should be drawn and how we talk about people. So it's like it is a new thing that we all kind of have to litigate, and that was something I normally don't do, like follow up stuff, but I had to go through comments that I had gotten in the first stream because I was like, we need to like, there were things that people brought up that I thought were good points, but then also just things where I'm like, I don't know that it's fair to like talk about it like this. Like even the thing that you brought up about like the Cynthia stuff, I think that there are fair points to bring up because I know that there are a lot of people with eating disorders who do it like competitively with other people. And I think that there were a lot of people who have had that experience personally, who saw what was happening with Ariana and with Cynthia and recognized it as like, this looks like what I went through with my friends in high school or whatever. And I think it's fair for people to bring that up and say like in a closed space of like, we're already talking about this, like this is what that looked like to me. I think it's fair to talk about that, but then it does become a weird thing of like, when it gets wrapped up so much in celebrity culture, then it becomes a point of gossip of like, who is enabling what, and like what you were saying of like people figuring out who the problem was, that it was Ariana doing it to Cynthia, and it's like, well, that part, that's where the line gets crossed of like, now we're not just relating of like, this looks like what happened with me and my friend, now we're talking specifically about who is to blame there.
I agree.
And that
okay,
is
I agree with that.
Incredibly weird.
Yeah, because I do want people, I mean, I do this for a living where I use real people's lives to learn more about our own. So obviously we're talking about people. We're just trying to make sure that we don't turn it into like misogyny or ableism or like, we should be trying to actually be better. So 100% the issue for me was like, Ari's like this evil, manipulative, like, whoa, like, and now I understand influence, I understand responsibility. I just think like humanity is suffering. Otherwise humanity wouldn't be this troubled. And so the question is, how do we tackle the suffering and how do we suffer wisely? Because there are people who are going to be told like, when you're sick, you don't deserve to be a parent. You don't deserve to be a partner. Like there are going to be people who internalize this as, until I am perfectly healthy, which is an impossible state of being, that only then can I get a job, and only then can I be loved, and only then can I be in public. And I always say there's like a threshold of unhealthy and healthy, and you just need to be over the line of healthy, and then everything else is a journey into a constant flux of, back and forth. Like, you don't want to be toxic or abusive. Okay, that's the super unhealthy. But once we're over that line of healthy, it's a ebb and flow of today's not a great day, tomorrow's a better day. But at least I'm overall not sinking into self-harm or major depression, or even though those things also fluctuate, girls. So don't black and white it with me. Some of those things fluctuate as well. The idea is to give hope to people because I think there's so much hope to be had. There's so much optimism to be had because I know I'm a good person. I know I think you're a good person. I know my chat's good people. And I'd like to believe that all of us deserve to exist in the world in the bodies that we inhabit, the ones we did not choose, by the way, the ones we were just simply given and born into. Like it's not like I chose my body. And then I have to exist in a world where my body is under scrutiny, policies being made about my body. And now I've got the girlies and the gays and the theys on TikTok also talking about my body. It's like, man, I can't get away from it. The misogynists love talking about it. The feminists love talking about it. What are we doing? That's kind of my last thought on that. Go ahead, let's wrap up a little bit, but also any thoughts you want to share at all?
I would just say, I think I agree about like, like the threshold of like trying to get up past that threshold of health into healthy. I think also the thing for me and why it was even important for me to talk about the Ariana thing in general was just to like trying to at least establish the understanding of what healthy is and what it isn't, and try to prevent the normalization of malnourishment in an emaciated body, and relating that back to like not Ariana but Hassan, and like the idea that he was just talking about going on Ozempic because he's like so petrified of like food noise and stuff. And I understand that maybe it is like a huge problem in his life. I don't know, but like I am worried about the rhetoric of us thinking that food and wanting food is automatically like unhealthy, that if you like want food, that that's something that you need to like cut out of your life. And that is something that I don't know. I think that there are probably people that really do struggle with a food noise throughout the day who maybe benefit from going on Ozempic, but I
Sure.
am very disturbed by the idea that like that it is just beneficial to not ever think about it, and it's beneficial to like to suppress your appetite as much as possible, which I think we are moving toward increasingly as a culture. That
Sure.
is very scary. So
Yeah.
that my message, my final thoughts are eating food is a thing that you have to do, and you should try to do it however works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah. That's going to give me something to think about. Yeah. Eating food. Are we moralizing eating food though? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I
this
think
is
that
the
like we just have to be somewhat understanding. This is where, and I think it almost kind of correlates a little bit to, and maybe this seems like a leap, but like the growth in like AI and stuff and the optimization culture and productivity culture. I do believe that like we are more than just our biology and we're more than just our bodies, but we have to be somewhat realistic about the fact that like we do have bodies that are meant to function in a certain way, and that way includes an intake of nutrition, like a regular intake of nutrition. And that's something that you just can't really get past, no matter what technology you develop, no matter what mindset, what like meditation practices you try to do, what how clean you try to eat. It doesn't change the fact that like your body needs a certain amount of nutrition.
yeah.
And what that nutrition looks like for different people is different.
Yeah.
But I think we all need to be aware of the fact that like you have a physical body that does have certain needs.
I agree with you. I think the Hassan example is throwing me because I know Hassan has a binging problem. So he, from my understanding, he has a lack of, he has no self-control over the food problem, and that's going to come back and make him feel even worse. So if he can take a drug to help him, I think that could be a good thing. But I agree with you. Generally, you shouldn't be ashamed. If you're hungry, eat. But if you're not hungry and you're overeating to the point where you're vomiting, then you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Then I can see that. So like, yeah, I hear that. Like
Sure. And
Yeah.
for me, like to clarify with the Hassan thing, it's I don't whatever Hassan needs to do for his own body is like whatever. It's the rhetoric that he's pushing to his audience,
Okay,
and
yeah,
I would
definitely.
wish that he was more like specifically careful about like
Sure.
demonizing the idea of food noise and demonizing the idea of like because especially with his overall rhetoric, like he has just such fat phobic rhetoric in general
does.
that when he's
He does.
telling his audience that like he needs to cut out all of his food noise, maybe that is a problem for him specifically, but paired with everything else, it comes with this implication of like wanting food is probably bad. you
Sure.
know?
Yeah, I think without a doubt, I would love for, I mean, I want nothing more than Hassan to go to therapy and heal his childhood trauma and love his fat boy body and love his childhood self and free that little boy from the chains of white supremacist body archetypes. And I would love him to do all those things so deeply. And I also do think it comes out in his stream. I think all of us our mental health impacts our content. And yes, we would make better content if we were healthier. It probably wouldn't be as popular, but I do think that the healthier we are, it could impact things. So I agree with all of that Hassan and Ari and everyone deserves. All of us deserve a good therapist. All of us deserve to love ourselves. All of us deserve to deconstruct. And all of us have the moral responsibility as we age into adulthood, as we are the grown-ups past 30. Everybody in your 20s, I'm giving you time. Once you hit your 30s, you are morally obligated, in my framework, not yours, to start to learn how to be the adult in the room because kids are watching you. And the fact is, kids are listening to us, and that should be the conversation. So if any child is ever listening to me, your body is neutral. I don't care what state of being it is in. It is not a reflection of your character. And we can talk about ways to have a better relationship with this vessel that we are all born and forced to be in. But there are so many conversations to have here, but I want the root of all this conversation, from my perspective at least, to be that I am not going to judge you for how your body is. That's my last. Okay, that's really my last thought. Your real last thought.
My real last thought is, I don't know. Do what you
Okay.
do.
Okay, is
Just
there
be
now?
aware.
Yeah, just be aware. Now, okay, now that you've been here, and I want to thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that was on your mind, maybe we were talking, or anything that you want to ask, or how are your spoons? Anything?
I don't think so. I'm sure like if I like rewatched this entire conversation, I'm sure there were probably maybe things that I would correct about my own stuff, or maybe things that I would comment on. So maybe I'll leave a comment later if I think of anything.
Or
But
reach
at the current
out
moment,
if this was comfortable and you can sit and think and meditate on it. But if in the future, if you're like, oh, I really like that, and I think I'd like to do it again, like please reach out anytime. This was really lovely, and Jasmine, I appreciate it so much.
yeah, I love being on. I haven't watched the chat a whole lot, but I mean, if the chat has anything that
They've been enjoying it. They have been enjoying
okay.
the fuck out of it. They've really been
Oh,
just
good.
like da, 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 da. I see generally like everyone's been enjoying it. If anyone has a question, you can quickly post it. But they seem to be liking it. I know some people here also seem to feel like I believe people are like judging Ariana. I think we covered those topics though pretty much. Everyone says thanks for coming on. Please come back. This was awesome. Great stream. Great job, Jasmine. Like all very nice things.
Good.
Yeah,
And yeah,
great.
I'm happy to come back whenever. I'll talk about anything.
Perfect.
It is
Okay.
nice. I enjoy streaming and I enjoy just ranting by myself, but it is sometimes even when I'm on stream, I'm like, man, I wish I was not the only person talking right now.
Me too. No, I have that thought all the time. And I think what I struggle with is, just building the right kind of people to have conversations with. But it's nice that you are in such a specific bubble that you really know a lot about it. So you have a lot to you're really doing something here, which I really appreciate. I think sometimes I'll do collabs with people. I'm like, why do you make content? And they don't exactly know. They don't know their niches. They don't know what they're doing. And that's fine. But then I don't know how to direct the convo. And I always try to collab with people whose content I see and I think, oh, I want to talk to them. So when I saw your video come up on my recommended, I was like, oh, this is good. Like I shared it with my Discord. I was like, oh, I got to talk to her about this. I hope she says yes. So I'm just glad that you did.
Yeah, I was happy when I saw you reached out because I've seen some of your stuff before. I hadn't seen any of your commentary on like Ariana or anything, but
I try to stay away
I
from
had
it.
yeah, I had someone mention you in one of my in like a comment, so I knew that you were talking about it. But I had seen other stuff, and I was very happy to talk to a girl. I love
Yeah.
girls.
Yeah, yeah. And this is a very queer space too. So we want to see more femmes and queers and girls and they, thems. And we just want to see someone other than a straight white man talking about all of our lives, All right, girl, we'll wrap it up. But thank you for being here and reach out anytime.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.